I'm trading my freedom for my family's survival. Marrying a man they say killed his first wife with coldness alone. That's what Elena Whitford told herself the night before her wedding to the Duke of Ravenmore. No fairy tale, no rescue, just a business arrangement sealed with her father's desperation and a stranger's indifference. They said the Duke's heart died with his late wife. They said his house was a tomb where laughter went to suffocate. But Elena had already learned something about survival. Sometimes the only way forward is to walk straight into the storm. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. Elena stood at the window of her father's study, watching water streak down the glass in crooked lines, pooling in the cracks of the cobblestone street below. The city looked like it was drowning. Maybe it was. Maybe they all were. Elena. Her father's voice cut through the silence. She didn't turn around. She knew what was coming. Had known for weeks, really, ever since the creditors started showing up at odd hours, ever since her mother stopped wearing jewelry to church, ever since the house staff dwindled from 12 to 3. Elena, look at me when I'm speaking to you. She turned. Marcus Whitford sat behind his desk, the mahogany surface covered with papers he no longer had the energy to pretend to read. He looked older than his 52 years. The lines around his mouth had deepened into permanent grooves of worry. His collar was slightly askew, something that never would have happened 2 years ago, back when appearances still mattered, back when they still had something to lose. I've made arrangements, he said. Elena said nothing. Her hands were folded in front of her, fingers laced together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The Duke of Ravenmore has agreed to a marriage contract. The ceremony will take place in 2 weeks. There it was. The word she'd been waiting for, dreading, preparing herself to hear without flinching. How much? She asked. Her father blinked. Excuse me? How much is he paying to clear our debts? Marcus flushed. Elena, that's not... It's exactly what this is, father. Don't insult both of us by pretending otherwise. Her voice was calm, too calm. She'd practiced this in her head 100 times, rehearsed the exact tone that would keep her from screaming or crying or throwing something through that rain-soaked window. So I'll ask again, how much? Her father looked down at his hands. Enough to keep the house. Enough to settle with the creditors. Enough to give your brother a chance at university without the weight of scandal hanging over his head. Enough to buy a daughter. Enough to save a family. They stared at each other across the desk. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant. What do you know about him? Elena asked finally. Her father shifted in his chair. He's respected, wealthy, connected to half the titled families in the country. And widowed, yes. And they say he loved his first wife so much that when she died, he buried his heart with her, that he hasn't smiled in 5 years, that his house is run like a military barracks, and his children barely speak above a whisper. Marcus's jaw tightened. People say a lot of things. Is any of it true? Does it matter? Elena laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. No, I suppose it doesn't. She moved to the door, then paused with her hand on the frame. 2 weeks, you said? Yes. Then I'll need to pack. The Duke of Ravenmore arrived in the city on a Thursday. Elena didn't meet him that day. Didn't see him when he visited her father to finalize the contracts. Didn't catch a glimpse when his carriage rolled through the rain-slick streets toward the lawyer's offices downtown. Her mother suggested, insisted really, that Elena should be present, should make herself available, should try to make a good impression. Elena refused. If he's buying me, she told her mother over breakfast, he'll get exactly what he paid for. No more, no less. Her mother's teacup rattled against the saucer. Elena Marie Whitford, you will not speak of your marriage in such vulgar terms. Why not? It's vulgar business, Mother. Might as well call it what it is. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. Her mother set down her tea with careful precision. Catherine Whitford had been a beauty in her youth, still was, really, though the years and worry had worn down the edges. She looked at Elena with a mixture of exhaustion and something that might have been sympathy if either of them had the energy for it. Do you think I wanted this for you? Catherine asked quietly. Elena met her gaze. No, but you're allowing it anyway. What choice do we have? There's always a choice. Not for people like us. Not anymore. Her mother's voice cracked slightly. You think I don't know what this is? You think I don't understand what we're asking of you? I carried you for 9 months, Elena. I raised you. I taught you to read and to dance and to hold your head high, even when the world tried to break you. And now I'm handing you to a stranger because the alternative is watching everything we've built crumble to dust. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. She looked away. The Duke will treat you well, her mother continued. He's an honorable man. He'll provide for you, protect you. But he won't love me. The words hung in the air between them. Catherine didn't deny it. Love is a luxury, darling. Security is a necessity. Learn to tell the difference. Elena met the Duke 2 days before the wedding. The meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a tea room in the old quarter that catered to the kind of clientele who valued discretion over ostentation. Elena arrived with her mother. The Duke arrived alone. She saw him first through the rain-spotted window as his carriage pulled up to the curb. He was tall. That was her first impression. Tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of precise control that suggested military training, or maybe just years of holding himself together by sheer force of will. He wore black. All black. Even his overcoat. Of course he does, Elena thought. He stepped into the tea room, water dripping from the brim of his hat. The owner rushed forward with apologies and a towel. The Duke waved him off with a gesture that managed to be both polite and dismissive. Then his eyes swept the room and landed on Elena. She stood. They looked at each other for a long moment. His face was harder than she'd expected, all sharp angles and dark eyes that gave away nothing. There were lines around his mouth that spoke of tension held too long, a small scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He was handsome in the way a cliff face is handsome, imposing, unyielding, dangerous if you got too close. Miss Whitford, he said. His voice was deep, rough around the edges, like he didn't use it enough. Your Grace. Elena kept her tone neutral. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped at a distance that was appropriate but not warm. Up close, she could see flecks of gray in his dark hair, could smell rain and leather and something else. Tobacco, maybe, or wood smoke. Shall we sit? He asked. It wasn't really a question. They sat. Her mother attempted small talk, comments about the weather, the tea room, the upcoming ceremony. The Duke responded with the bare minimum required by politeness. His attention remained fixed on Elena. Finally, her mother excused herself to speak with the tea room owner about something utterly unimportant, leaving them alone at the table. We should establish expectations, the Duke said. Elena raised an eyebrow. Should we? I believe in clarity, Miss Whitford. It prevents misunderstandings. How practical of you. Something flickered in his expression. Irritation, maybe, or surprise that she wasn't cowering. I'm offering you a comfortable life, security, a respected name. In return, I expect you to manage my household, represent my family in social settings, and raise my daughters with appropriate discipline. Appropriate discipline, Elena repeated. What does that mean exactly? It means teaching them proper behavior, ensuring they understand their position and responsibilities, preparing them for the lives they'll eventually lead. They're children. They're daughters of a duke. It's not the same thing. Elena set down her teacup with a soft click. And what about affection? What about it? Will I be allowed to show them affection? Or is that also inappropriate for daughters of a duke? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Sentimentality makes children weak, and coldness makes them cruel. Miss Whitford, Elena, she interrupted. If we're to be married, you might as well use my name. He stared at her. She stared back, refusing to look away, refusing to give him the submission he clearly expected. Very well, he said finally. Elena, let me be direct. I'm not looking for a love match. I'm not interested in romance or companionship or whatever other fantasies young women entertain about marriage. My first wife, he stopped, something dark passing over his features. My first wife is gone. What I need now is someone capable of managing a household and maintaining appearances. If you can do that, we'll coexist peacefully. If you cannot, or if you have expectations beyond what I've outlined, I suggest you speak now." Elena took a sip of her tea. It had gone cold, but she drank it anyway. "And what about you?" "What about me?" "Do you have any expectations beyond a well-managed household and social appearances?" "No. No expectations of fidelity, of loyalty, of basic human decency?" His eyes narrowed. "Are you always this combative? Are you always this cold?" "I'm honest, miss, Elena. I'm offering you a transaction. Nothing more, nothing less. If you want flowery words and false promises, you've chosen the wrong husband. I didn't choose you at all, Your Grace. My father did." Something shifted in his expression. For just a moment, she thought she saw what? Recognition? Understanding? But it was gone before she could be sure, replaced by that same impenetrable mask. "Then we understand each other," he said. "Do we?" "You need financial security. I need a capable wife. We both fulfill our roles, and everyone gets what they need." Elena set down her cup. "And what about what we want?" "Want is irrelevant." "Is it?" "In my experience, yes." She studied him, this man who would be her husband in 2 days, this stranger who spoke of marriage like a business merger, who looked at her with eyes that had learned not to feel anything at all. "I'll agree to your terms," she said finally. "I'll manage your household. I'll raise your daughters. I'll play the role of devoted wife in public." She leaned forward slightly. "But don't mistake my agreement for surrender, Your Grace, and don't expect me to become another ghost in your lifeless house." "Noted," he said flatly. "Are we finished here?" "Unless you have further questions." Elena stood. The Duke rose as well, manners so ingrained they were automatic even in him. "Just one," she said. "Your daughters. What are their names?" He blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "Vivian and Charlotte, 10 and 7. "Thank you." Elena gathered her gloves, her reticule. "I'll see you at the ceremony, then." She started to leave, then paused. "And Your Grace, I don't break easily. I thought you should know that." She didn't wait for his response. The wedding took place in a small chapel on the outskirts of the city. It rained. Of course it rained. Elena stood in a borrowed dress, white silk that had belonged to her mother, altered to fit her smaller frame, and listened to a minister recite words about love and devotion that rang hollow in the damp air. The Duke stood beside her in black, his face expressionless, his responses mechanical. There were fewer than 20 people in attendance. Her family, a handful of the Duke's associates. No friends, no celebration, just witnesses to a transaction. When the minister pronounced them married, the Duke kissed her cheek, brief, perfunctory, cold as the rain still hammering against the chapel windows. Elena felt nothing, expected nothing. She'd already learned the most important lesson about this marriage. Survival, not happiness, was the goal. The reception was held at the Duke's townhouse. It lasted exactly 90 minutes. Elena smiled at strangers, accepted hollow congratulations, and counted the minutes until she could leave. "You did well," her mother whispered at one point, squeezing her hand. Elena wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled. "Thank you, Mother." When it was finally over, when the last guest had departed, and the servants had cleared away the minimal decorations, the Duke informed Elena that they would depart for Ravenmore Manor the following morning. "I've arranged for your belongings to be transported separately," he said. "We'll travel by private coach. The journey takes approximately 4 hours." 4 hours, Elena repeated. "Yes. In a coach. Together. That's generally how travel works, yes." She almost laughed. Almost. How delightful. If he caught her sarcasm, he didn't show it. "We depart at 8. I suggest you retire early." He left her standing in the hallway of what was technically now her house, though it felt about as welcoming as a mausoleum. Elena climbed the stairs to the guest room. She still thought of it as the guest room, couldn't quite wrap her head around the idea that she lived here now, and sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't cry. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry, and she kept that promise. Instead, she removed the pins from her hair, changed into a nightgown, and lay in the dark listening to rain and wondering what fresh hell tomorrow would bring. The journey to Ravenmore Manor was exactly as uncomfortable as Elena had anticipated. The Duke sat across from her in the coach, reading through correspondence and making occasional notes in a leather-bound journal. He didn't speak, didn't attempt small talk or try to ease the awkwardness of being trapped in a confined space with a woman he'd married out of convenience. Elena watched the landscape change through the rain-streaked window. They left the city behind, the cramped streets and smoke-stained buildings giving way to rolling hills and dense forest. The further they traveled, the more isolated the world became. After 2 hours, she couldn't take the silence anymore. "Tell me about your daughters," she said. The Duke looked up from his papers. "What about them?" "Anything. Everything. I'm going to be living with them. It would help to know more than just their names." He set down his pen with deliberate care. "Vivian is 10. She's studious, obedient, rarely causes trouble. Charlotte is 7. She's more spirited, prone to emotional outbursts." "Emotional outbursts?" Elena repeated. "You mean she acts like a 7-year-old child?" "I mean she lacks discipline. Or maybe she lacks warmth." The Duke's expression hardened. "I didn't bring you here to judge my parenting. You brought me here to raise your children. That requires understanding them, which is difficult when you describe them like military recruits instead of daughters. They require structure, not coddling. They require both." "Your opinion is noted." Elena bit back a sharp response. Fighting with him wasn't going to help. Not yet, anyway. She needed to see the situation for herself, needed to understand exactly what she was walking into before she could figure out how to change it. "How long has it been?" she asked more quietly. "Since their mother died?" The Duke went very still. 5 years. "And you've raised them alone since then?" "I've employed capable staff." "That's not what I asked." "It's the answer you're getting." Elena studied him. He'd gone rigid, every muscle in his body tense, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the tension in his neck. This was dangerous territory. She could feel it. But she also knew that if she backed down now, she'd be backing down forever. "They must miss her," Elena said softly. "They were young when she died. Charlotte barely remembers her. That doesn't mean she doesn't miss her. This conversation is over." "Your Grace, I said it's over." The words came out sharp enough to cut. Elena fell silent, but she didn't look away. They stared at each other for a long moment, her refusing to be intimidated, him refusing to let his walls crack even slightly. Finally, the Duke returned to his papers. Elena returned to the window. They didn't speak again for the rest of the journey. Ravenmore Manor appeared through the rain like something out of a Gothic novel. It was massive, 3 stories of gray stone and dark windows, surrounded by grounds that probably looked impressive in good weather, but currently just looked bleak. The carriage rolled up a long gravel drive lined with leafless trees, their branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. "Cheerful," Elena muttered. If the Duke heard her, he didn't respond. The coach stopped in front of the main entrance. A servant appeared immediately with an umbrella, opening the door and offering a hand to help Elena down. She stepped out into the rain, her shoes sinking slightly into the wet gravel, and looked up at the house that was now supposed to be her home. It looked exactly like a place where Joy went to die. The front door opened. An older woman stood in the entrance, tall, severe, dressed in black with her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like she'd been carved from the same stone as the house. "Mrs. Holloway," the Duke said, brushing past Elena, "this is my wife. See that she's settled in the East Wing." He disappeared into the house without another word. Elena stood in the rain, staring after him. The servant with the umbrella shifted awkwardly. "Ma'am?" he said quietly. She shook herself. "Yes. Sorry. Lead the way." Mrs. Holloway, who Elena assumed was the housekeeper, waited in the entrance hall with an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. She was in her 60s, maybe older, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a mouth set in a permanent line of disapproval. "Your Grace," she said, the title sounding more like an accusation than a greeting. "Welcome to Ravenmore Manor." "Thank you," Elena said, wiping rain from her face. "I've prepared the East Wing as instructed." "Your belongings will be brought up shortly. Dinner is served at 7. His Grace expects punctuality." "Of course he does," Elena murmured. Mrs. Holloway's eyes narrowed. "I beg your pardon?" "Nothing, just thank you for your hospitality. I'll show you to your rooms." They climbed the main staircase, a massive thing of dark wood and stone, to the second floor. The house was exactly what Elena had expected. Cold, formal, oppressively quiet. Their footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors stared down from the walls. Everything was clean, orderly, and utterly devoid of life. Mrs. Holloway stopped in front of a door at the end of a long hallway. "Your quarters, Your Grace. His Grace's rooms are in the West Wing." "Separate wings, of course." "And the children?" Elena asked. "Third floor, the nursery and schoolroom." "May I see them?" Mrs. Holloway's expression remained unchanged. "They're at their lessons currently. It would be inappropriate to interrupt." "I'm their new mother. I think I can interrupt lessons if I choose. His Grace prefers—" "I understand what His Grace prefers, Mrs. Holloway, but I'd like to meet my stepdaughters. Now, please." For a moment, the housekeeper looked like she might refuse. Then something shifted in her expression. Calculation, maybe. Or just resignation to the fact that this new duchess wasn't going to be as easily managed as she'd hoped. "Very well," she said stiffly. "Follow me." They climbed another staircase, narrower this time, clearly meant for servants and children rather than guests. The third floor was quieter than the rest of the house, if that was possible. Mrs. Holloway led Elena down a corridor to a door at the far end. She knocked once. "Miss Chen, Her Grace would like to meet the children." The door opened. A young woman stood there, mid-20s, Chinese, with intelligent eyes and ink stains on her fingers. She looked surprised, then quickly masked it with a polite smile. "Your Grace, she said, bowing slightly. "I'm Miss Chen, the children's governess." "It's nice to meet you, Elena said, meaning it. At least one person in this house seemed capable of normal human interaction. Miss Chen stepped aside. "Please, come in." The schoolroom was smaller than Elena expected, but warmer than the rest of the house, literally warmer, with a fire burning in the hearth. Books lined the walls. A large table dominated the center of the room, covered with papers and writing materials. 2 girls sat at the table. They looked up as Elena entered, and her heart broke a little. The older one, Vivian, was thin and pale, with dark hair pulled back in a severe braid. She had her father's eyes, dark and guarded. She sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in front of her, her expression carefully blank. Charlotte, the younger girl, was smaller, rounder, with lighter hair and freckles across her nose. She looked at Elena with undisguised curiosity, her eyes wide. "Girls," Miss Chen said gently, "this is your new mother. She's come to meet you." Vivian stood immediately, executing a perfect curtsy. "Your Grace." Charlotte scrambled to her feet a half-second later, her curtsy less polished, but enthusiastic. "Your Grace!" Elena's throat tightened. They looked so small, so painfully formal. She crossed the room and knelt down, actually got down on their level, ignoring Mrs. Holloway's sharp intake of breath. "Hello," Elena said softly. "You can call me Elena if you'd like, at least when we're in private." Charlotte's eyes went wide. Vivian looked uncertain. "I know this is strange," Elena continued. "You don't know me. I don't know you, but I'm hoping we can change that, if you'll give me a chance." "Are you going to stay?" Charlotte blurted out. "Charlotte," Vivian hissed, but Elena just smiled. "Yes, I'm going to stay." "Even though Father is—" Charlotte trailed off, looking at her sister uncertainly. "Even though your father is what?" Elena asked. Vivian's expression shuddered completely. "Nothing, Your Grace. My sister speaks out of turn." Elena looked between them. There was a story here. Something these children had learned not to say. "Well," she said, standing, "I won't interrupt your lessons any further, but I hope I'll see you both at dinner." "We take our meals in the nursery," Vivian said. "Do you? Why?" It's always been that way. Elena glanced at Mrs. Holloway, who stood ramrod straight by the door. Is there a rule about children not dining with the family? His Grace prefers a quiet dining room. Yes, I'm beginning to understand what His Grace prefers. Elena turned back to the girls. Would you like to have dinner with your father and me tonight? Charlotte's face lit up. Really? Charlotte, we couldn't, Vivian said quickly. Father wouldn't. Let me worry about your father, Elena said. 7 o'clock. I'll send someone to collect you. She walked to the door, then paused. And girls? You can speak freely around me. I'm not as frightening as I might look. Charlotte giggled. Vivian almost smiled. As Elena left the schoolroom, she could feel Mrs. Holloway's disapproval radiating like heat from a stove. His Grace will not approve, the housekeeper said as they descended the stairs. Then His Grace can take it up with me directly. Your Grace, I must advise. Elena stopped and turned. Mrs. Holloway, I appreciate that you're trying to help me navigate this household, but I'm not interested in maintaining the status quo. Those children are isolated, lonely, and being raised like miniature adults instead of the children they are. That ends now. This is how it's always been done. Then it's been done wrong. Mrs. Holloway's lips thinned. I've served this family for 30 years, and I respect that, but I'm part of this family now too, which means things are going to change. They stared at each other. Elena refused to back down, refused to let this woman, or anyone else in this God-forsaken house, intimidate her into submission. Finally, Mrs. Holloway nodded stiffly. As you wish, Your Grace. Thank you. Now, if you'll show me to my rooms, I'd like to rest before dinner. Elena's quarters were exactly what she'd expected. Formal, expensive, and cold. The bedroom was dominated by a massive four-poster bed with heavy curtains, dark furniture, dark walls. The only spots of color came from a painting above the fireplace, a landscape that looked as bleak as everything else in this house, and a vase of white roses on the vanity. Someone had already unpacked her few belongings. Her dresses hung in the wardrobe. Her books sat on a shelf. It should have felt like her space. Instead, it felt like she was invading someone else's carefully preserved shrine. She walked to the window. Her rooms overlooked the grounds, or what she could see of them through the rain. Gardens, maybe. A path leading into the woods. In better weather, it might have been beautiful. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. A young maid entered carrying a tea tray. She couldn't have been more than 16 with red hair and nervous eyes. "Mrs. Holloway thought you might like some tea, Your Grace," she said quietly. "Thank you. What's your name?" The girl blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "Annie, Your Grace." "Thank you, Annie. You can set it on the table." Annie did so, her hands shaking slightly. She started to leave, then hesitated. "Yes?" Elena prompted. I wanted to say, welcome, Your Grace. It's nice to have someone new in the house." Elena smiled. "It's nice to be welcomed, thank you." After Annie left, Elena poured herself tea and sat in the chair by the window. She had about 2 hours before dinner. 2 hours to figure out how she was going to survive in this place without losing her mind. The door to the adjoining room caught her eye. She walked over and tried the handle. Locked, of course. Couldn't have the Duchess wandering into spaces she wasn't meant to see. Elena returned to her tea and her window and her thoughts. She'd meant what she'd said to Charlotte. She was going to stay. She'd made a bargain, her freedom for her family's security, and she would honor it. But that didn't mean she had to let this house consume her. Didn't mean she had to let the Duke's coldness spread to the children who deserved better. She was going to change things. One small act of rebellion at a time. Starting with dinner. At precisely 7 o'clock, Elena descended to the dining room. The Duke was already there, standing by the fireplace with a glass of whiskey. He looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable. "You're punctual," he said. "You requested it." "I did." Elena crossed the room. She'd changed into a dinner dress, dark blue silk, elegant but not ostentatious. The Duke was still in black. "I've invited your daughters to join us," she said. The whiskey glass paused halfway to his mouth. You've what? Invited Vivian and Charlotte to have dinner with us. They should be down shortly. We don't do that here. We do now. The Duke set down his glass with controlled precision. Elena, I understand you're trying to assert yourself, but what? But children should be kept upstairs like furniture? But they shouldn't eat with their own father? But there are reasons for the way things are done in this house. What reasons? He didn't answer, just looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. They're children, Elena said more quietly. Your children. They're lonely and isolated and desperate for any kind of normalcy. One dinner isn't going to destroy your precious routine. You don't understand? Then help me understand. It's easier this way. For whom? Before he could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Miss Chen appeared in the doorway with Vivian and Charlotte. The girls had changed into formal dresses, their hair freshly brushed. They looked nervous, excited, terrified. The Duke's entire body went rigid. Father, Vivian said, curtsying. Charlotte just stared at him with wide eyes. Elena watched the Duke's face, saw something crack in his expression, just for a moment, just a flash of pain or regret, or something too complicated to name, before the mask slammed back into place. Girls, he said stiffly. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Elena stepped forward. Come in, sit. Dinner should be ready shortly. They moved to the table, a massive thing that could have seated 20 but currently only had 4 places set, all clustered at one end. Charlotte sat next to Elena. Vivian sat across from her next to her father, maintaining careful distance. The Duke remained standing by the fireplace. Your Grace? Elena said. We're ready. He looked at her for a long moment, then moving like every step cost him something, he walked to the table and sat. The meal was served in near silence. Elena tried to make conversation, asked the girls about their lessons, their favorite subjects, what they liked to do in their free time. Charlotte answered in enthusiastic bursts. Vivian responded with careful, measured words. The Duke said nothing, just pushed food around his plate and radiated tension. Father used to read to us, Charlotte said suddenly. Before Mother died, he would do all the voices. The Duke's fork clattered against his plate. Charlotte, Vivian said sharply. What? He did. You remember. He read us that story about the princess and the dragon, and he made the dragon sound all growly and scary. Charlotte looked at her father hopefully. Remember, Father? The Duke stood abruptly. I've lost my appetite, excuse me. He left the room without another word. Charlotte's face fell. I shouldn't have. I didn't mean to. Elena reached over and took her hand. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. But Father left. He's angry. He's not angry at you. Then why did he leave? Elena looked at Vivian, who was staring at her plate with her jaw clenched, looking too old for her 10 years. Sometimes, Elena said carefully, people get sad when they remember things that hurt. That's not your fault. That's just grief. It's complicated. Do you think he'll ever read to us again? Charlotte asked quietly. Elena squeezed her hand. I don't know, but I'll read to you if you'd like. Charlotte's eyes lit up. Really? Really. After dinner, if you'd like. For the first time since Elena had arrived, the dining room felt a little less cold. Later that night, after she'd read Charlotte and Vivian 2 chapters from a book about brave girls and magical forests, after she'd seen them tucked into their beds in the nursery, after Miss Chen had thanked her with genuine warmth in her eyes, Elena returned to her rooms. She was exhausted, emotionally wrung out. This place was even worse than she'd imagined, not because it was cruel, but because it was suffocating. Everyone here had learned to live in suspended animation, going through the motions of existence without actually living. She changed into her nightgown and was about to extinguish the lamps when she heard it. A sound from the adjoining room, the locked one. Elena pressed her ear against the door. Heavy footsteps, the clink of glass against glass. Then something that might have been a choked sound. Grief, maybe? Or rage? Or both? She tried the handle again, still locked. Your Grace? She called softly. The sound stopped immediately. Your Grace, I know you're in there. Silence. I'm not going to apologize for having dinner with your daughters, or for asking Charlotte about her memories of you. But I think maybe we should talk about— There's nothing to talk about, came his voice through the door, rough, strained. I disagree. Your disagreement is noted. Now go to bed, Elena. She pressed her palm against the door. Those girls need you. They have everything they need. No, they don't. They need a father who doesn't flinch when they mention their mother. They need someone who can show them it's okay to remember, to feel, to live. You've been here one day. Don't presume to lecture me about my children. Someone needs to. She heard him move closer to the door, could almost feel him on the other side, separated by wood and locks and walls he'd built so high she wasn't sure anyone could ever scale them. I hired you to manage my household, he said, not to fix my life. You married me. There's a difference. Is there? Elena closed her eyes. Yes, there is. And whether you want to admit it or not, I'm here now. I'm part of this family, which means I'm not going to stand by and watch you all suffocate in your own grief. Go to bed, Elena. Your Grace. Now. The finality in his voice cut through any argument she might have made. Elena stepped back from the door. Fine. She'd pushed enough for one day. But this wasn't over, not even close. She climbed into the massive bed, pulled the heavy covers up to her chin, and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Inside, the silence felt heavier than ever. But Elena Whitford, Elena Ravenmore now, had never been good at accepting silence, had never been the kind of person to let injustice stand unchallenged, even when challenging it put her at risk. This house wanted her to be quiet, obedient, invisible. Too bad for this house she'd never learned how. Tomorrow, she decided, she would start making real changes, would push harder, fight smarter, and refuse to let anyone, not the Duke, not Mrs. Holloway, not the weight of tradition and grief, tell her that things had to stay the way they were. She'd walked into this storm willingly. Now she was going to reshape it. And if the Duke of Ravenmore didn't like it, well, he should have chosen a different wife. Elena woke to the sound of a child crying. It was barely dawn, gray light filtering through the heavy curtains. For a moment she lay still, disoriented, wondering if she'd imagined it. Then it came again, a muffled sobbing from somewhere above her. The nursery. She threw back the covers and grabbed her robe, not bothering with slippers. The hallway was freezing, the floorboards cold beneath her feet as she hurried toward the servants' staircase. Her breath misted in the air. Apparently heating the upper floors wasn't a priority in this house. The crying grew louder as she climbed. By the time she reached the third floor, she could tell it was Charlotte. Elena found her in the nursery, curled up in bed with her face pressed into her pillow, shoulders shaking. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of embers in the fireplace. No sign of Miss Chen. Charlotte? Elena said softly, moving to the bed. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Charlotte's head jerked up. Her face was blotchy and wet, her eyes swollen. I had a bad dream. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. Do you want to tell me about it? I'm not supposed to bother people with bad dreams. Father says they're just our minds being foolish. Your father says a lot of things, Elena murmured. She reached out, hesitated, then gently brushed Charlotte's tangled hair back from her face. But I'm here now, and I'm not bothered. Tell me. Charlotte hiccuped. I dreamed Mother was calling for me, but I couldn't find her. I kept running and running through the house, but all the doors were locked, and I could hear her crying, but I couldn't. Her voice broke. I couldn't help her. Elena's chest tightened. She pulled Charlotte into her arms, half expecting the child to resist. Instead, Charlotte clung to her like a lifeline, burying her face in Elena's shoulder. It's okay, Elena whispered, rocking her gently. It was just a dream. You're safe. I miss her so much, Charlotte sobbed, and I can't even remember what she looked like. Vivian says I should remember, but I can't, and Father won't talk about her, and I'm forgetting everything. Shh, listen to me. Elena pulled back enough to look at Charlotte's face. You were only 2 when she died. It's not your fault that you don't remember. And wanting to remember, wanting to talk about her, that's not wrong. That's normal. Father gets so angry when we mention her. He's not angry at you. He's angry at the world for taking her away. Elena wiped Charlotte's tears with her thumb. But that doesn't mean you have to pretend she never existed. You have every right to ask questions, to want to know about her. Really? Really? Charlotte sniffled. Will you tell me about your mother? Is she nice? Elena smiled sadly. She's complicated. She loves me, I think, but she's also afraid. Afraid of what people think, afraid of losing what little we have left. Fear makes people do strange things. Like father? Maybe. I don't know what your father's afraid of yet, but I'm going to find out. A floorboard creaked in the doorway. Elena turned to find Vivian standing there, wrapped in a blanket, watching them with those two old eyes. You should go back to bed, Vivian said quietly. Mrs. Holloway makes her rounds at 6. If she finds you here, let her find me. I'm allowed to comfort my stepdaughter. You don't understand how things work here. Elena stood, keeping one hand on Charlotte's shoulder. Then explain it to me. Vivian's jaw tightened. Everything here has rules. Times for waking, times for meals, times for lessons. We don't disturb the household. We don't make noise. We don't exist too loudly. That's not living. That's surviving. It's safer. Safer than what? Vivian looked away. Just safer. Elena studied the girl. There was something she wasn't saying, some fear that ran deeper than simple adherence to household rules. Vivian, Elena said gently, what happens when you break the rules? Nothing happens. Then why are you so afraid? I'm not afraid. You're terrified. I can see it. Elena took a step toward her. What did your father do? Did he hurt you? Punish you? No. Vivian's eyes went wide. Father never, he would never. She stopped, struggling with something. He just goes away. Goes away? In his head. He stops seeing us, stops talking, sometimes for days. Vivian's voice dropped to barely a whisper. After Mother died, he disappeared for 3 weeks, just locked himself in his study. Charlotte thought he was going to die too. And when he finally came out, it was like part of him had died. He looked at us, and I could see he didn't want to be reminded. Elena's throat constricted. Oh, sweetheart. So we learned to be quiet, to not remind him, to not need too much. Vivian's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical, like she was describing a mathematical equation. It's easier that way. For everyone. No, Elena said firmly. It's not easier. It's just slower death. Charlotte whimpered. Vivian flinched. Elena knelt down so she was at eye level with both girls. Listen to me, both of you. What happened to your mother was a tragedy. What's happening to you now is also a tragedy. You're being taught that love is dangerous, that feeling is weakness, that the only way to survive is to disappear. But that's wrong. That's so wrong. You can't change Father, Vivian said. People have tried. I'm not trying to change him. I'm trying to save you. Elena took each girl's hand. I made a promise at dinner last night, and I'm making it again now. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not going to let you grow up thinking you have to earn the right to be loved. Even if Father sends you away? Charlotte asked tremulously. He won't. How do you know? Because he needs me. He just doesn't realize it yet. Elena stood, pulling them both into a hug. Now, it's still early. Why don't we build up that fire and I'll tell you stories until breakfast? Vivian looked scandalized. We have a schedule. The schedule can wait. This is more important. For a moment, Vivian wavered. Then, slowly, she nodded. They spent the next hour curled up together in front of the rebuilt fire, Elena telling them stories about her own childhood, carefully edited versions that emphasized adventure over poverty, rebellion over desperation. Charlotte fell asleep halfway through, her head in Elena's lap. Vivian stayed awake, listening with an intensity that suggested she was memorizing every word. When the first light of full morning began to creep through the windows, Vivian finally spoke. You're different, she said quietly. Different how? From what I expected. from what father said wives were supposed to be. What did he say? That a wife's job was to maintain order, to keep the house running smoothly, to be agreeable. Elena snorted softly. I've never been particularly good at agreeable. I noticed. Vivian hesitated. He's going to fight you, on everything. I know. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Elena looked down at Charlotte's sleeping face, then back at Vivian. But I meant what I said. I'm not backing down. Not from him, not from anyone. Vivian studied her for a long moment. Then, so quietly, Elena almost missed it. Good. The clock on the mantel chimed 6. Vivian stiffened. Mrs. Holloway? She whispered. Sure enough, footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door swung open, and the housekeeper stood there, taking in the scene with obvious disapproval. Your Grace, she said icily, the young ladies should be preparing for their morning lessons. They're exactly where they need to be, Elena replied, not moving. It's highly irregular. Then perhaps it's time some of your regularities changed. Mrs. Holloway's expression could have frozen water. His Grace will hear about this. I certainly hope so. In fact, tell him I'd like to speak with him after breakfast. In his study. The housekeeper's eyebrows rose. His Grace does not take meetings during breakfast hours. He does now. Elena carefully shifted Charlotte's sleeping weight and stood. Come on, Vivian, let's get your sister back to bed properly. As they passed Mrs. Holloway, Elena could feel the woman's glare boring into her back. Let her stare. Let her disapprove. Elena hadn't come here to win popularity contests. She'd come here to survive. And if that meant burning this place down and rebuilding it from ash, so be it. After settling Charlotte back in bed and leaving Vivian with instructions to rest for another hour before lessons, Elena returned to her own rooms. She dressed carefully, a severe gray dress that said she meant business, her hair pulled back in a simple knot. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She studied herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed older than the girl who'd stood in her father's study just weeks ago. Harder. More determined. Good. At 8 o'clock sharp, she knocked on the Duke's study door. Enter. He was seated behind a massive desk, surrounded by papers and ledgers. He didn't look up when she came in. Mrs. Holloway said you wished to speak with me, he said flatly. Yes. I have 15 minutes. Elena walked to the desk and placed both hands on its surface, leaning forward. This isn't a business meeting, Your Grace. This is a conversation about your daughters. That got his attention. He looked up, his expression guarded. What about them? Charlotte had nightmares last night. About her mother. Something flickered across his face. The staff should have handled it. The staff didn't. I did. You should have woken Miss Chen. I was there. I comforted her. That's what mothers do. Elena didn't move, didn't back down from his stare. But the nightmare itself, that's on you. His expression went cold. Excuse me? Those girls are drowning in grief and confusion because you won't let them talk about their mother. You've made her memory taboo. You've taught them that feeling anything about her loss is wrong. I've done no such thing. You flinch every time they mention her name. You locked yourself away from them for weeks after she died. You've turned this entire house into a mausoleum. Elena's voice rose despite her efforts to keep it steady. They think they have to earn your love by pretending their mother never existed. The Duke stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know nothing about what happened in this house. Then tell me. It's none of your concern. It became my concern the moment I married you. It became my concern the moment I held your 7-year-old daughter while she sobbed because she can't remember what her own mother looked like. That's enough. No, it's not nearly enough. Elena straightened. I don't care how much you're hurting. I don't care what demons you're wrestling with. But I will not stand by and watch you teach those children that love is something to be feared. You've been here 3 days. And in 3 days I've seen more than I needed to. She took a breath, trying to rein in her anger. Your Grace, I'm not asking you to forget your wife. I'm not even asking you to stop grieving. But I'm asking you to let your daughters grieve too. To talk about her. To remember her without feeling like they're betraying you. The Duke's hands were clenched into fists at his sides. You think I don't want that? You think I don't? He stopped, jaw working. You don't understand. Then help me understand. I can't. Can't or won't. He turned away, staring out the window at the gray morning. When Margaret died, something broke in me. I looked at those girls and all I could see was her eyes, her smile, her... His voice cracked. Everything I said to them felt wrong. Everything I did reminded me of what I'd lost. So I stopped. I stopped trying because trying hurt too much. Elena's anger dimmed, replaced by something more complicated. Pity, maybe. Or just deep, bone-tired sadness. So you chose to lose them too. I chose to protect them from my grief. You chose to abandon them. He whirled around, his eyes blazing. I did what I had to do to survive. And what about them? What about what they needed to survive? They had everything, except a father. The words burst out of her. They had food and shelter and education, but they didn't have you, and children need more than material comfort. They need warmth, affection, someone to tell them it's okay to be sad, to be angry, to be anything other than perfectly behaved little ghosts. The Duke's face had gone white. Get out. No. Elena, I said no. She crossed her arms. You married me to manage your household. Well, I'm managing it. And part of that management includes making sure your children aren't emotionally destroyed by your inability to cope with loss. You're overstepping. I'm doing my job. You just don't like how I'm doing it. They glared at each other across the study. The air felt electric, dangerous. I could send you away, the Duke said quietly. Annul the marriage, pay your father's debts anyway, and send you back. You could try. What's stopping me? Elena smiled without humor. Pride. You're too proud to admit you made a mistake, too proud to let society see that you couldn't control your own wife, and too proud to face those girls and explain why another mother figure disappeared from their lives. His jaw clenched. You're playing a dangerous game. I'm not playing at all. This is deadly serious. She moved toward the door, then stopped. I'm going to make changes in this house, Your Grace. I'm going to let those girls laugh and play and be children. I'm going to talk about their mother with them, help them remember her, help them grieve properly. And you can either help me or stay out of my way, but you will not stop me. Elena, one more thing. She turned back. Tonight at dinner, you will ask them about their day. You will listen when they answer, and you will not leave the table early. I don't take orders. Yes, you do, from me. Because whether you want to admit it or not, I'm the only thing standing between you and complete emotional ruin. She opened the door. 8 o'clock. Don't be late. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. That had been reckless, dangerous. She just threatened and challenged a man who could make her life hell if he chose. A man who had every social and legal right to control her completely. But she'd also seen the truth in his eyes. Beneath the anger and the ice, there was pain. Raw, unhealed, festering pain. And maybe, if she pushed hard enough, that pain would finally break open and start to heal. Or maybe he'd destroy her first. Either way, she was committed now. The next few days fell into an uneasy pattern. Elena spent her mornings with the children, much to Mrs. Holloway's disapproval. She read to them, took them on walks through the grounds when the rain let up, asked questions about their mother, and answered honestly when they asked about hers. Vivian remained cautious, watching Elena like she expected her to vanish at any moment. But Charlotte bloomed. She laughed more, talked more, started drawing pictures again, something Miss Chen confided she hadn't done since her mother's death. The Duke kept his distance. He appeared at dinner as Elena had demanded, but he spoke little. His responses to the girls' attempts at conversation clipped and formal. Elena could see him struggling, could see the war raging behind his eyes every time Charlotte giggled or Vivian shared something about her day. He was trying. It was a terrible, painful attempt, but he was trying. Then came the incident with Mr. Pemberton. Elena was in the library, a massive room full of books that looked like they hadn't been touched in years, when she heard shouting from the entrance hall. She hurried out to find a tall, thin man with graying hair arguing with Mrs. Holloway. I don't care what your master prefers, the man was saying, his voice sharp with aristocratic disdain. I'm here to see the children. It's been over a month. Mr. Pemberton, I must insist. Insist all you want. Where are they? Elena descended the stairs. Is there a problem? The man turned, his eyes swept over her, assessing and dismissive. And you are? The Duchess of Ravenmore. And you are? Thomas Pemberton. I'm here to see my nieces. Elena's mind raced. Nieces. That meant, you're Margaret's brother. I am. His expression softened slightly. I apologize for the intrusion, Your Grace. But the Duke has been refusing my visits for months. I'm concerned about the girls. Their welfare is being seen to, Mrs. Holloway said stiffly. By whom? By staff? By the man who locked himself away and pretended his children didn't exist. Pemberton's voice was bitter. Margaret would be horrified. That's enough. Everyone turned. The Duke stood in the doorway of his study, his face carved from stone. Thomas, he said coldly, leave. I want to see my nieces. No, you can't keep me from them. I can and I will. This is my house. They are my children. You have no rights here. Pemberton's face flushed with anger. I have every right. I'm their blood. More than you can say for... He glanced at Elena. For whatever arrangement you've made here. The Duke's hands clenched. Get out. Not until I see them. Elena stepped between them before the situation could escalate further. Gentlemen, perhaps we could discuss this rationally? There's nothing to discuss, the Duke said. I disagree. Elena turned to Pemberton. Mr. Pemberton, I understand your concern, but barging into someone's home and making demands isn't the way to address it. I've tried being reasonable. I've sent letters, requested visits, all ignored. Because you blame me, the Duke said quietly, for her death. The room went silent. Pemberton's expression twisted. You were supposed to protect her. I know. She died giving birth to your child, a child you wouldn't even let survive. The baby died too, the Duke said, his voice hollow. There was nothing anyone could do. Elena felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. A baby. He'd lost his wife and a child. The girls had lost not just their mother, but a sibling. You never talk about him, Pemberton said. You act like he never existed. Because it's too painful. For you? What about for Vivian and Charlotte? What about their right to mourn their brother? What about... Enough! The Duke's shout echoed through the hall. You want to see them so badly? Fine. See them. See how well adjusted they are, how happy, then leave and don't come back. He turned and strode away, his footsteps echoing. Elena and Pemberton stood in awkward silence. I apologize, Pemberton said finally. I shouldn't have. That was inappropriate. You love them, Elena said quietly. The girls. You want to be part of their lives. They're all I have left of my sister. Then perhaps we can arrange something. Not today. Emotions are too high. But soon. Regular visits, properly scheduled. He looked at her with surprise. The Duke would never agree. Let me handle the Duke. Elena smiled slightly. I'm getting rather good at it. Pemberton stayed for tea. Elena sent for the girls, who were overjoyed to see their uncle. Charlotte threw herself into his arms. Even Vivian smiled, a real smile that transformed her whole face. The Duke didn't appear. Elena found him later in the stables, brushing down his horse with mechanical precision. You knew, she said from the doorway. When I pushed about Margaret, about letting the girls talk about her, you knew it wasn't just her they needed to grieve. The Duke didn't stop brushing. What do you want, Elena? I want to understand. There's nothing to understand. My wife died. My son died. I failed them both. End of story. It's not the end. It's barely the middle. She moved closer. What was his name? It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. His hand stilled on the brush. James. We were going to name him James. Did the girls know that Margaret was pregnant? Vivian did. Charlotte was too young. He resumed brushing, harder now. Vivian was so excited. She wanted a baby brother more than anything, And then his voice broke. I had to tell her they were both gone, had to watch her face just shatter. Elena's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything. No, but talking about it might. I've talked. To doctors, to priests, to well-meaning relatives who thought they could help. He finally looked at her. None of it brought them back. That's not the point of talking about grief. The point is to survive it, to learn to carry it without letting it crush you. Is that what you think I'm doing? Letting it crush me? I think you're so afraid of feeling it that you've stopped feeling anything at all. And you're teaching your daughters to do the same. The Duke set down the brush with careful precision. Thomas was right. I failed Margaret. I failed James. I'm failing Vivian and Charlotte. Adding you to that list isn't going to make anything better. I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking you to fix yourself. Elena took a breath. I'm going to invite Mr. Pemberton back next month for a proper visit. No. Yes. Those girls deserve to know their uncle, to have family who actually acts like family. He hates me. He's grieving, same as you. She moved to the stable door, then turned back. And your Grace? Tonight at dinner, I'm going to ask the girls about their mother, about James, about everything you've been afraid to talk about. You can join the conversation or you can leave the table, but either way, the conversation is happening. She left him standing there, knowing she'd just thrown down a gauntlet that could shatter everything. That evening, Elena descended to dinner with her stomach in knots. The girls were already seated, chattering quietly with Miss Chen. The Duke's chair sat empty. 6 o'clock came and went. No Duke. Elena forced herself to smile at the girls. Well, shall we begin? Shouldn't we wait for Father? Vivian asked. I don't think he's coming, sweetheart. Charlotte's face fell. Is he angry again? I don't know, but we're not going to let it ruin our evening. Elena nodded to the servants to begin serving. So, tell me something about your mother that I don't know. Both girls froze. It's all right, Elena encouraged. I want to hear about her. I want to know what she was like. She sang, Charlotte said quietly, all the time, even when she couldn't carry a tune. Vivian smiled slightly. She used to sing this ridiculous song about a frog and a princess, completely made up, different every time. She sounds wonderful. She was. Vivian's smile faded. She was going to teach Charlotte to play piano before... She stopped. Before she died, having James, Elena finished gently. The girls stared at her in shock. You know about James, Vivian whispered. Your uncle told me, today. Elena reached across the table and took both their hands. And I think it's important that we talk about him, that we remember him, even though he never got to live the life he should have had. Father never speaks his name, Charlotte said. I know, but that doesn't mean we can't. He'll be angry, Vivian said. Probably, but some things are worth his anger. They talked. Haltingly at first, then with growing confidence. Vivian shared memories of her mother reading stories, of gentle hands braiding her hair, of laughter that filled rooms. Charlotte talked about fragments, a smell, a feeling, a vague sense of safety she couldn't quite articulate. And they talked about James, about the brother they'd lost before they'd ever known him. I used to imagine what he'd be like, Vivian confessed. If he'd lived, whether he'd have mother's eyes or father's, whether he'd be quiet like me or loud like Charlotte. I still imagine it sometimes, Elena admitted. I had a brother who died when I was young, fever. I still think about who he might have become. The confession hung in the air between them, a bridge of shared grief. Does it get easier? Charlotte asked. Missing them? No, but you get stronger, strong enough to carry the missing without letting it break you. The dining room door opened. The Duke stood there, his face pale, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying, or trying not to. Everyone froze. He walked to the table slowly, like every step cost him something, sat in his chair, looked at his daughters. She used to sing to me too, he said quietly. Your mother, when I couldn't sleep, terrible voice. But it worked every time. Charlotte's eyes went wide. Vivian's breath caught. And James, the Duke's voice was rough, barely controlled. I never told you this, but the night before she went into labor, Margaret made me promise something. She made me promise that no matter what happened, I would make sure you girls knew you were loved, that you would grow up happy. He looked at Elena. She saw the war in his eyes, the battle between grief and hope, between holding on and letting go. I broke that promise, he said. I've been breaking it every day for 5 years. Father, Vivian breathed. I'm sorry. The words seemed to tear out of him. I'm so sorry. I thought if I didn't let myself feel it, if I kept everything locked away, it would hurt less. But it doesn't. It just hurts differently. And it made me hurt you. Charlotte was crying. So was Vivian. The Duke stood, moved to them, and for the first time in years pulled his daughters into his arms. They clung to him, all three of them shaking, crying, finally letting the grief they'd been holding surface and break. Elena stood quietly and left the room. She made it to the hallway before her own tears came. She leaned against the wall, pressing her hand to her mouth, trying to hold in the sobs. She'd done it. She'd cracked the foundation, forced the pain into light. But watching that family break open hurt more than she'd expected, because she realized in that moment that she wanted this, wanted to be part of it, wanted to matter to those girls, to that broken man who was finally starting to heal. And she had no idea if any of them would ever let her in, or if she was just a tool they'd use to survive, necessary, but ultimately disposable. Footsteps approached. She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself. The Duke stood there, his own face still wet with tears. Thank you, he said hoarsely. Elena shook her head. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. I know. You did it for them. He took a step closer. But you saved me anyway. They stood in the hallway, this unlikely pair. The cold Duke and the defiant Duchess, both damaged, both fighting to survive in a world that had broken them. This doesn't fix everything, Elena said. I know. You're still going to struggle, still going to have bad days. I know. And I'm still going to push you, still going to challenge you when I think you're wrong. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. I wouldn't expect anything less. Elena met his eyes, saw something there she hadn't seen before. Not warmth exactly, not affection, but recognition. Respect. It was a start. The girls want you back in the dining room, he said. Charlotte's determined to tell you every story about Margaret she can remember. It might take hours. I have time. They walked back together. And for the first time since she'd arrived at Ravenmoor Manor, Elena felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd found her place. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battles were still ahead. 3 weeks passed in something that almost resembled peace. The Duke began taking breakfast with his daughters. He still wasn't warm, would probably never be warm in the way other fathers were. But he was present. He listened when Charlotte chattered about her drawings. He helped Vivian with her Latin declensions. He didn't flinch anymore when they mentioned Margaret's name. Elena watched from the margins, never quite sure where she fit in this reconfigured family. She'd been the catalyst for change, but now that the change was happening, she felt strangely superfluous, like a stagehand who'd moved the scenery but wasn't part of the actual play. Mrs. Holloway thawed incrementally. The housekeeper still disapproved of Elena's unconventional methods, but she'd stopped actively undermining her. Small victories. Then Thomas Pemberton returned. He arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with a woman Elena didn't recognize. Tall, elegant, in her early 50s with Margaret's same green eyes. Lady Ashford, the Duke said stiffly when Elena found them in the drawing room. I wasn't expecting you. Clearly. The woman's voice was cultured, cold. Thomas wrote to me about the changes here. I wanted to see for myself. Elena's stomach dropped. Lady Ashford, Margaret's mother, the girl's grandmother. Your Grace, Elena said, curtsying. I know who you are. Lady Ashford's gaze swept over her, assessing and finding her wanting. The second wife. How convenient. Catherine, the Duke said warningly. Don't Catherine me, Adrian. You cut us out completely after Margaret died, refused visits, ignored letters. And now suddenly there's a new Duchess, and we're supposed to simply accept it? You're here now, aren't you? Because Thomas threatened to petition for custody if I didn't intervene. The words dropped like stones into still water. Elena looked at Pemberton. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't threaten. I suggested that perhaps the court should evaluate custody. The Duke's voice went deadly quiet. You're trying to take my daughters? Not take. Ensure their welfare. Pemberton shifted his weight. You've been unstable, Adrian. Everyone knows it. 5 years of isolation, refusing family, locking yourself away. I'm their father. You're a man who's been drowning for half a decade. And now you've brought in some girl half your age to play house. Watch yourself, Elena said sharply. Lady Ashford turned her attention to Elena. Tell me, my dear, what exactly are your qualifications for raising 2 traumatized children? I love them. Love. Lady Ashford's laugh was brittle. How touching. Unfortunately, love doesn't erase the damage that's been done. These girls have been neglected, isolated from their own family. They're not isolated anymore, Elena interrupted. They're healing. Their father is healing. Whatever this is, she gestured between Pemberton and Lady Ashford. It's not about the girls' welfare. It's about control. You've known them for a month, Lady Ashford said. I've known them since birth. Don't presume to lecture me about what they need. Then why weren't you here? The question burst out before Elena could stop it. If you cared so much, where were you for the past 5 years? Lady Ashford's expression hardened. Adrian made it clear we weren't welcome. I made it clear I needed space, the Duke said. There's a difference. You locked us out. We lost Margaret too, but you acted like you were the only one grieving. Pemberton's voice cracked. Do you have any idea what that was like? Losing my sister and then losing access to the only pieces of her we had left? I was trying to survive by destroying everyone around you. That's enough, Elena said. Both of you. This isn't helping anyone, least of all the girls. The girls are precisely why we're here. Lady Ashford moved to the window, her back rigid. I've consulted with my solicitors. Given the Duke's history of instability, his sudden remarriage to someone of questionable background. Questionable? Elena's hands clenched. My family may not be titled, but we're respectable. Your family is bankrupt. Everyone knows this marriage was a transaction. Lady Ashford turned back. How much did he pay to clear your father's debts? The room went silent. Elena felt heat crawl up her neck. That's none of your concern. It is when it suggests you're unfit to raise my granddaughters. A woman who sold herself for money. Stop. The Duke's voice cut through the tension like a blade. You will not speak to my wife that way. Your wife, Lady Ashford repeated. You barely know her. You married her out of desperation, and now you're using her to paint a picture of domestic stability for the courts. There are no courts. There will be no custody battle. Are you certain about that? Pemberton pulled out a folder from his bag. We have documentation, testimony from servants about the conditions in this house, about your absences, your detachment, the way those girls were essentially raised by staff. The Duke went very still. You've been investigating me? We've been protecting them. By threatening to rip them from their home? By ensuring they're in a stable environment. Lady Ashford's composure cracked. My daughter died giving you a son. The least you can do is raise her daughters properly. I am raising them. You weren't. You abandoned them. And now you think a few weeks of playing father erases 5 years of neglect? Elena watched the Duke's face, saw the old walls start to rebuild themselves, the progress they'd made threatening to crumble under the weight of accusations. The girls are happy, she said firmly. They're thriving. If you actually cared about their welfare instead of your own wounded pride, you'd see that. I want to speak with them, Lady Ashford said. Alone, without either of you present. Absolutely not, the Duke said. Then I'll petition the courts tomorrow. You have no grounds. I have 5 years of your failure as a father. I have a rushed marriage to a woman with no experience raising children. I have witnesses who will testify that those girls were emotionally abandoned. Lady Ashford's eyes were hard. Do you really want this dragged through the courts? Want society picking apart every mistake you've made? The Duke looked like he'd been struck. Elena could see him calculating, weighing the damage. What do you want? He asked quietly. I want regular visitation, monthly, at minimum. I want a say in their education, their social calendar, their future prospects. Lady Ashford paused, and I want assurance that this, new arrangement isn't simply a mask over the same neglect. Meaning I want evidence that you've actually changed, that they're not just being used as props in whatever charade you're performing. Elena stepped forward. You want evidence? Fine. Spend the day here. Watch how they interact with their father. See for yourself that this isn't a charade. The Duke shot her a sharp look. Elena ignored it. One day, she continued, you and Mr. Pemberton can observe. Join us for meals, see the girls' lessons, spend time with them, and then you'll see that threatening custody is unnecessary and cruel. Lady Ashford considered. Very well. Tomorrow. I'll stay at the inn in the village tonight. You'll stay here, Elena said. The Duke's eyes went wide. Your family. Whatever tensions exist between you and the Duke, those girls deserve to know their grandmother and uncle without it being part of a custody negotiation. Elena, the Duke started. It's the right thing to do, Elena said firmly, meeting his gaze. And you know it. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Mrs. Holloway will prepare rooms, he said stiffly. After Lady Ashford and Pemberton were shown to their quarters, Elena found the Duke in his study, pouring whiskey with shaking hands. What the hell were you thinking? He demanded. Inviting them to stay? I was thinking that pushing them away would only make things worse. They're threatening to take my children, and running from that threat won't make it disappear. Elena crossed to him. They want proof you've changed, so we give them proof. It's been 3 weeks, Elena. 3 weeks of me trying to figure out how to be a father again. That's not enough time. It's enough time for them to see you're trying, that you care. She touched his arm. We can do this. Together. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, something complicated passing over his features. Why are you helping me? If they take the girls, you'd be free. You could leave this place, go back to your life. I don't want to leave. But the admission surprised them both. The Duke set down his glass. Elena, I know what this marriage is. I know why it happened. But those girls, her voice caught. I care about them. I care about what happens to them. And I'm not going to let Margaret's family destroy what we've started building just because they're angry and grieving. They might have grounds for custody. The past 5 years were terrible, but they're not the present, and they don't have to be the future. Elena squeezed his arm. Trust me, please. He studied her face. Then slowly, he nodded. Tomorrow's going to be difficult, he said. I know. They're going to push, test, try to find cracks. Then we don't give them any. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept imagining worst-case scenarios, Lady Ashford manipulating the girls, Pemberton finding some legal loophole, the courts deciding that a broken duke and a bought duchess weren't fit guardians. She was staring at the ceiling when she heard the knock. Come in, she called, expecting a servant. The Duke entered instead. He looked as exhausted as she felt, still dressed, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. Can't sleep either? Elena asked, sitting up. Every time I close my eyes, I see Margaret's mother taking the girls away. He moved to the window, keeping his distance. I keep thinking, if I'd been a better father, if I hadn't shut everyone out, none of this would be happening. You can't change the past. But I created this situation. I'm the reason they have ammunition. Elena got out of bed, pulling her robe tighter. You want to know what I think? Do I have a choice? I think Margaret's family is using the girls as a proxy for their own grief. They couldn't save her, so now they're trying to save her daughters from you. She moved closer. But that doesn't mean they're right, or that you deserve to lose them. I lost them years ago. I'm just getting them back. Then fight for them. Really fight. Not with lawyers and money, but by showing Lady Ashford and Thomas that you're the father those girls need. He turned to face her. And if I fail, you won't. You don't know that. No, but I believe it anyway. Elena reached out, hesitated, then took his hand. You're not alone in this. Remember that. His fingers tightened around hers. Thank you. They stood in the quiet darkness. Two people brought together by necessity, finding something unexpected in the ruins. I should go, the Duke said finally, but he didn't move. You should, Elena agreed. She didn't let go of his hand. Elena! Whatever he was about to say was cut off by a scream from upstairs. They both ran. Charlotte's room. Elena got there first, bursting through the door to find the child sitting up in bed, sobbing, while Vivian tried to comfort her. What happened? Elena demanded. Nightmare, Vivian said, her own voice shaking. About the courts. She was listening when grandmother and uncle were arguing. Elena's heart sank. She moved to the bed, pulling Charlotte into her arms. Sweetheart, it's okay. They're going to take us away, Charlotte hiccuped. I heard them. They said father's not fit, and they're going to take us. No one is taking you anywhere, the Duke said from the doorway. Charlotte looked up at him, her face blotchy and terrified. Promise? He crossed the room and knelt by the bed, meeting his daughter's eyes. I promise. I will not let anyone take you from me. Not Lady Ashford, not the courts, not anyone. But they said you weren't a good father. They said I made mistakes. And I did. I made terrible mistakes. His voice was rough. But I'm fixing them now, and I will never, ever let you go. Do you understand? Charlotte threw herself into his arms. The Duke held her, his eyes squeezed shut, his jaw clenched with the effort of keeping his composure. Vivian watched from the other side of the bed, her expression guarded. You too, Elena said softly, holding out her hand. Come here. Vivian hesitated, then moved into Elena's embrace. The four of them sat there, a makeshift family, broken and rebuilding, holding each other against the storm. I'm scared, Charlotte whispered. I know, the Duke said. So am I. Really? Really, but being scared doesn't mean we give up. He pulled back to look at both girls. Tomorrow, your grandmother and uncle are going to be here. They're going to watch us, judge us, try to find reasons to doubt us. So we're going to show them the truth, that we're a family, that we belong together. But you and Elena, Vivian stopped. You don't really love each other. Everyone knows this marriage is just what? Elena asked gently. Vivian looked at her feet. Business? Father needed a wife. You needed money. It's not real. The words stung more than Elena wanted to admit. You're right, the Duke said quietly. This marriage began as a transaction, but families aren't built on romance, Vivian. They're built on commitment, on choosing each other every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He glanced at Elena. She saw the question in his eyes. Your father and I may not have married for love, Elena said carefully, but that doesn't mean we don't care about each other or about you. Love isn't just romance. It's partnership. It's showing up when things are difficult. It's fighting for each other. Are you fighting for us? Charlotte asked. Every single day, Elena said. Then we'll fight too, Vivian said, her voice small but determined. The Duke smiled, a real smile, rare and genuine. That's my girl. They stayed with the children until both girls finally fell asleep. Elena and the Duke stood by the door, watching them breathe in the moonlight. Tomorrow's going to be hell, he murmured. Probably. They're going to look for any crack, any sign of weakness. Then we don't show them any. Elena turned to face him. We present a united front, a real family. We give them nothing to work with. Can we do that? Convincingly? We have to. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so unexpected, so intimate, that Elena's breath caught. Thank you, he said softly, for staying, for fighting, for all of it. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won. But we haven't lost either. The next morning arrived too quickly. Breakfast was a carefully orchestrated performance. The Duke sat at the head of the table, Elena at his right, the girls on either side. Lady Ashford and Pemberton watched from across the table like judges at a trial. "Charlotte, your posture," Lady Ashford said. Charlotte straightened immediately, fear flickering across her face. "She's fine," Elena said calmly. "She's 7. Proper deportment begins young. So does kindness, and accepting that children aren't miniature adults." Lady Ashford's lips thinned. "I raised my daughter with discipline and care." "And your daughter was wonderful," the Duke said quietly. "But Charlotte is not Margaret. None of us are. And trying to recreate the past won't bring her back." Pemberton leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we're trying to replace Margaret?" "I'm suggesting that comparing everyone to a ghost is unfair to the living. The tension could have been cut with a knife." Charlotte pushed food around her plate, her earlier appetite gone. Vivian sat ramrod straight, barely breathing. "Tell us about your lessons," Pemberton said, shifting tactics. "What are you studying?" "Latin, mathematics, history, literature," Vivian recited. "Miss Chen says I'm ahead in everything except penmanship." "And you enjoy learning?" "Yes, sir." "What about friends, social connections? Are you being prepared for society?" Vivian glanced at her father. "We don't have many visitors." "Why not?" "Because—" Vivian stopped, uncertain. "Because we're in mourning," the Duke said. "Still, for Margaret." "It's been 5 years, Adrian. And grief doesn't operate on your schedule, Thomas." Lady Ashford dabbed her mouth with her napkin. "The girls should be integrated into society, introduced properly. They're being kept isolated. They're being protected," Elena interrupted, "from exactly this kind of judgment and pressure. Protected or imprisoned. That's enough." The Duke's voice was sharp. "I've allowed this interrogation out of courtesy, but my daughters are not on trial." "Aren't they?" Lady Ashford's gaze was cold. "We're trying to determine if this environment is suitable. It's their home. A home where they've been emotionally neglected for years." "Not anymore," Charlotte said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Not anymore," she repeated, louder. "Father reads to us now. He has breakfast with us. He asks about our day. Elena teaches us things and lets us ask questions about Mother and James without getting sad." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "Maybe it wasn't good before, but it's good now, and I don't want to leave." Vivian reached over and took her sister's hand. Lady Ashford's expression softened slightly. "Charlotte, I know you miss Mother. We miss her too. But Father's trying. He's really trying, and Elena's helping. Why can't you just let us be happy?" The dining room fell silent. Lady Ashford looked at the Duke, then at Elena, then at her granddaughters, holding hands, united. "I see," she said quietly. After breakfast, Lady Ashford requested a private word with Elena. They walked in the gardens, what passed for gardens in early spring, mostly bare earth and stubborn weeds. "You love them," Lady Ashford said. Not a question. "Yes. And my son-in-law?" Elena chose her words carefully. "I respect him. I'm committed to making this work. That's not love. Maybe not, but it's honest." Elena stopped walking. "Can I ask you something? Why now? Why wait 5 years and then suddenly appear threatening custody?" Lady Ashford's face crumpled slightly. "Because I'm scared. Scared that if I don't act now, I'll lose them completely. The way I lost Margaret." She sat on a stone bench, suddenly looking her age. "When she died, Adrian wouldn't let me help with the arrangements. Wouldn't let me see the girls for weeks. Every time I tried to visit, I was turned away. Do you know what that's like? Losing your child and being shut out of what remains?" Elena sat beside her. "No, but I can imagine. I don't want to take them from Adrian. I can't lose them too." "Then don't make custody threats. Don't force his hand." Elena took a breath. "What if we tried something different? Real visitation. Not supervised, not negotiated through lawyers, just family time. Monthly weekends, holidays, building actual relationships instead of fighting over them. He'd never agree. He will if I ask him to. Lady Ashford looked at her sharply. You have that much influence? I have his ear and his trust, which is more than anyone else can say right now. Why are you doing this? Defending him? Elena thought about that, about the cold Duke who was learning to feel again, about two little girls who deserved better than adults fighting over them like property. Because someone has to break the cycle, she said finally. All of you, Adrian, you, Thomas, you're so trapped in grief and blame that you can't see what matters. Those girls need stability. They need family. And they won't get it if everyone's too busy fighting to actually love them. Lady Ashford was quiet for a long time. You're quite something, aren't you? I'm practical, and I'm tired of watching people sabotage themselves. Margaret would have liked you, I think. The words hit Elena unexpectedly hard. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep fighting for them, even when it's hard, even when Adrian retreats into himself again. And he will. He always does. Not if I can help it. Lady Ashford actually smiled. I believe you. The crisis seemed to be diffusing. Lady Ashford agreed to drop the custody threat in exchange for regular visitation. Pemberton, though still skeptical, backed down. The day ended with an awkward but genuine dinner where Charlotte actually laughed. Elena thought they'd survived the storm. She was wrong. The next morning, a courier arrived with a letter for the Duke. Elena was in the library when she heard the crash. Something heavy hitting a wall, glass shattering. She ran to his study. The Duke stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, his face white. Papers were scattered everywhere. A decanter lay shattered against the wall. What happened? Elena demanded. He handed her the letter without speaking. She read it, felt her blood turn to ice. It was from a doctor. Dr. Harrison Blackwell, specifically, the physician who'd attended Margaret during her final pregnancy. My Lord Duke, I write with great hesitation, but recent events compel me to break a silence I've maintained for 5 years. The rumors circulating about your wife's death, that it was a natural tragedy, are false. The truth is far more complicated, and I fear Lady Ashford's custody threats may be based on information that fundamentally misrepresents what occurred. I can no longer remain silent while your character is assassinated and your daughter's welfare is questioned. We must speak. Immediately. Dr. H. Blackwell. What does this mean? Elena asked. What truth? The Duke's hands were shaking. I don't know. The doctor said rumors are false. What rumors? The ones Thomas has been spreading, that I was responsible for Margaret's death, that my neglect or something I did caused complications. Did you? No. He looked at her wild-eyed. I loved her. I would never... A knock on the door. Mrs. Holloway entered, her face grim. Your Grace, Lady Ashford and Mr. Pemberton have returned. Mr. Pemberton insists on speaking with you immediately. He has... She hesitated. He has documents. They all convened in the drawing room. Pemberton had papers spread across the table, medical records, testimonies, legal documents. I didn't want to do this, he said. But you forced my hand. Thomas, what is this? The Duke demanded. The truth. Pemberton pushed a document forward. Testimony from Dr. Blackwell about Margaret's death. Lady Ashford had gone pale. Thomas, we agreed. We agreed to evaluate. I've evaluated, and I think the girls deserve to know what really happened to their mother. Elena picked up the document, started reading, felt the world tilt. This says... She stopped, read it again. This says Margaret's pregnancy was high risk, that she'd been advised not to carry another child, that she... Elena looked at the Duke. That she chose to continue the pregnancy against medical advice. Yes, Pemberton said, because Adrian insisted on an heir, a son. That's a lie, the Duke said hoarsely. Is it? Dr. Blackwell's notes say you were present at the consultation, that you were told the risks, and that you... I told her I didn't need a son. The Duke's shout echoed through the room. I told her we had 2 healthy daughters, and that was enough. She's the one who insisted. She wanted... His voice broke. She wanted to give me what she thought I needed. Convenient, Pemberton said, blaming a dead woman. I'm not blaming her. I'm telling you what happened. Then why did Dr. Blackwell's notes suggest otherwise? I don't know. Elena was still reading. The document was clinical, detached, but between the lines she could see something else. Inconsistencies. Phrasing that seemed cool. Coached. When was this testimony written? She asked. Pemberton frowned. 2 years ago. 2 years after Margaret's death? Yes. Why would a doctor wait 2 years to document something this important? He was protecting the family's privacy, or he was pressured to create a specific narrative. Elena looked at Lady Ashford. Did you ask him to write this? Lady Ashford's silence was damning. Catherine, the Duke breathed, what did you do? I wanted answers, she said quietly. I wanted to understand why my daughter died. Dr. Blackwell was reluctant at first, but I convinced him that the truth mattered more than discretion. The truth or your version of it? They're the same thing. No, Elena said sharply. They're not. Because if the doctor is now saying rumors are false, it means this testimony was wrong, or incomplete, or deliberately misleading. You're defending him because you're his wife. I'm defending the truth because I'm tired of lies. Elena threw the papers down us. All of you. You've spent 5 years constructing narratives that make you feel better about an unbearable loss. But those narratives are destroying the people who survived. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? My marriage exists because families like yours destroy people like mine. I know what it means to be collateral damage in other people's wars. Elena turned to the Duke. We're calling Dr. Blackwell. Now. Today. And we're getting the actual truth before anyone else gets hurt. The Duke stared at her, then nodded. Summon him, he said to Mrs. Holloway. I don't care what it takes. I want him here by tomorrow. Dr. Blackwell arrived the next evening. He was older than Elena expected, 70 maybe, with trembling hands and haunted eyes. He looked at the assembled group, the Duke, Elena, Lady Ashford, Pemberton, and seemed to shrink. I shouldn't have sent that letter, he said immediately. I've broken confidentiality. You've done more than that, Pemberton said coldly. You've contradicted your own testimony. Because that testimony was wrong. The room went silent. Dr. Blackwell sat heavily in a chair, looking every year of his age. Lady Ashford came to me 2 years after the Duchess's death. She was persistent, grieving. She wanted someone to blame, and He closed his eyes. I was weak. I let her interpretation shape my recollection. I signed documents that suggested the Duke had pressured his wife into a dangerous pregnancy. But that's not what happened, Elena said. No. Doctor. Blackwell looked at the Duke. Your Grace, I owe you an apology. The Duchess made her own choice. Against my advice, yes. Against your wishes, even. But it was her choice. Why? The Duke asked hoarsely. Why did she risk it? Because she loved you. Because she thought, rightly or wrongly, that giving you a son would make you happy. She knew the risks. I explained them in detail, and she chose to proceed anyway. Lady Ashford made a sound like a wounded animal. There's more, Doctor. Blackwell continued. The complications during labor, they weren't due to negligence or pressure. They were simply tragedy. Sometimes there's no one to blame. Sometimes terrible things happen despite everyone's best efforts. You let me believe my son-in-law killed my daughter, Lady Ashford whispered. You wanted to believe it, and I was too weak to deny you that comfort. Pemberton stood abruptly. I don't. He looked at the Duke. I've spent 5 years hating you. I know. I threatened to take your children because I thought you were responsible. I know. Why didn't you defend yourself? Why didn't you tell me this? The Duke's laugh was hollow. Because part of me wondered if you were right, if I had somehow caused it, if loving her had been enough to save her. He looked at his hands, and because correcting you meant reliving it, every detail, every moment, and I can't. His voice broke. Elena moved to his side, taking his hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. I'm sorry, Pemberton said. I'm so sorry. Lady Ashford was crying silently. I've spent 5 years blaming you for something that wasn't your fault. I've let my grief poison everything. I almost destroyed your family because I couldn't accept that sometimes there's no one to blame. There is someone to blame, the Duke said quietly. Me. Not for Margaret's death, but for what came after. For shutting you out. For letting grief make me cruel. For failing my daughters while I drowned in guilt over something I couldn't have prevented. He stood, still holding Elena's hand. I can't change the past, he said. But I can change what happens now. Thomas, Catherine, your family. You should have been part of the girls' lives all along. That's on me, and I'm sorry. And I'm sorry for the custody threat, Lady Ashford said. For weaponizing my grief. For trying to take them from you. We've all made mistakes, Elena said quietly. The question is what we do now. Pemberton nodded slowly. Agreed. They talked late into the night, made plans, set boundaries, began, haltingly, to build something like forgiveness. When it was finally over, when Lady Ashford and Pemberton had retired to their rooms and Dr. Blackwell had left, Elena and the Duke stood alone in the drawing room. Thank you, he said, for pushing for the truth, for not letting them destroy everything. Thank you for letting me help. They stood close, closer than they'd ever been. Elena could feel heat radiating from him, could see the vulnerability in his eyes. Elena, he said softly, I need to tell you something. What? This marriage, it started as a transaction, but you've become your... He struggled with the words. I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in again, but I want to try. With you. Her heart hammered. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want this to be just an arrangement anymore. I'm saying that somewhere in the chaos, you became important to me, and I think I might be falling. A crash from upstairs, shouting, Charlotte screaming. They ran. The hallway was full of smoke. Flames licked at the nursery door. Miss Chen stood in the corridor, her face black with soot, holding Vivian. Charlotte's still inside, she gasped. The Duke lunged for the door. Elena grabbed his arm. It's too hot. You'll be killed. He shook her off and plunged into the flames. Elena watched in horror as smoke billowed out, as the fire grew, as seconds stretched into eternity. Then he emerged, Charlotte in his arms, both of them coughing and burned. They collapsed on the floor. Servants rushed forward with water, blankets. She's breathing, the Duke gasped. Charlotte's eyes fluttered open. Papa? I'm here. I'm here. Elena knelt beside them, checking Charlotte's burns. They were bad, but not life-threatening. The Duke's hands were worse, blistered and raw where he'd torn through burning wood. Someone get Dr. Blackwell, Elena ordered, and put out that fire before it spreads. Servants scattered. Elena stayed with the Duke and Charlotte, with Vivian clinging to both of them, all of them shaking with reaction. How did it start? Elena asked Miss Chen. The governess looked shaken. I don't know. I just left to get more lamp oil. When I came back, the room was already burning, almost like... She stopped. Like what? Like it had been set deliberately. Multiple points of origin. Elena's blood ran cold. Someone did this on purpose? Vivian whispered. Elena looked down the hallway, saw a door closing quietly, saw the hem of a skirt disappearing around the corner. She stood slowly, her mind racing. Someone in this house had just tried to kill the Duke's daughters, and Elena had a terrible suspicion about who. She didn't voice it. Not with the Duke cradling Charlotte, not with Vivian trembling against Miss Chen, not with servants running everywhere trying to contain the fire. But her mind catalogued everything, the carefully placed fires, the timing, that fleeting glimpse of fabric. Dr. Blackwell arrived within minutes, still at the house from the earlier confrontation. He tended to Charlotte first, coating her burns with salve and wrapping them in clean bandages. The girl was brave, biting her lip to keep from crying out. You'll heal, the doctor told her gently. The burns aren't deep. You were lucky. Lucky. Elena thought about how close they'd come to losing her and felt sick. The Duke's hands were worse. Second-degree burns across both palms where he'd ripped through burning timber. Blackwell worked in silence, cleaning and bandaging while the Duke sat motionless. His jaw clenched so tight Elena could see the muscle jumping. "The pain will be considerable," Blackwell said. "I can give you laudanum." "No." The Duke's voice was flat. "I need to be clear-headed." "Your Grace, I said no." Elena knelt beside his chair. "At least let him give you something for later. When the shock wears off, you'll need it." He looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed from smoke, but there was something else there too. Fear, rage, determination. "Someone tried to kill my daughter," he said quietly. "I know. In my own house. I know. I want to know who, and I want to know why." Elena glanced at the door. Mrs. Holloway stood there, her face pale, wringing her hands. "Your Grace," the housekeeper said, "the fire's out. It was contained to the nursery and the adjoining hallway. The damage is extensive." "Where will the girls sleep tonight?" Elena asked. "We can prepare rooms on the second floor." "They'll stay with me," the Duke said. "Both of them. In my chambers." Mrs. Holloway blinked. "Your Grace, that's highly irregular." "I don't care. I want them where I can see them." He stood, swaying slightly. Elena grabbed his arm to steady him. "And I want every servant in this house assembled in the entrance hall in 30 minutes. Everyone. No exceptions." "Your Grace, 30 minutes, Mrs. Holloway." The housekeeper scurried away. Elena helped the Duke carry Charlotte to his rooms while Miss Chen guided Vivian. They settled both girls in the massive bed, Charlotte already half asleep from exhaustion and shock, Vivian wide-eyed and alert. "I'm going to stay right here," the Duke told them. "All night. You're safe." "Promise," Charlotte mumbled. "Promise." Once the girls were settled, Elena pulled the Duke into the adjoining sitting room. "You can't interrogate the entire staff," she said quietly. "Not tonight. Not like this. You're injured, exhausted. Someone tried to murder my child, Elena. Forgive me if I'm not concerned with propriety." "I'm not talking about propriety. I'm talking about strategy." She kept her voice low. "If you go down there angry and accusatory, whoever did this will hide better. We need to be smart about this." "What do you suggest?" Elena took a breath. "Let me handle it." "You?" "Yes. The servants trust me more than they trust you. They might actually tell me the truth." The Duke opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. "Fine, but I'm coming with you." "You're staying with your daughters." "Elena, they need you more than I do right now, and if whoever did this thinks you're too injured to investigate, they might get careless." She touched his bandaged hand gently. "Trust me, please." He searched her face, then nodded. "Be careful." "Always am." The entrance hall was crowded with servants, maids, footmen, kitchen staff, groundskeepers. They stood in nervous clusters, whispering among themselves. Mrs. Holloway had them lined up like soldiers awaiting inspection. Elena descended the stairs slowly, letting them see her, letting them worry. "I know you're all frightened," she said. "So am I. Tonight, someone set fire to the nursery while Lady Charlotte was inside. She survived only because her father risked his life to save her." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I'm going to ask questions," Elena continued, "and I expect honest answers. Not because I'm demanding them, but because a child's life is at stake. If any of you know anything, saw anything, heard anything unusual, this is your chance to speak." Silence. Elena walked along the line of servants, studying each face. Most looked genuinely shocked and scared. A few avoided her eyes. "Annie," Elena said, stopping in front of the young maid, "you were on the third floor earlier. Did you see anyone near the nursery who shouldn't have been there?" Annie trembled. "No, Your Grace. I was in the linen closet most of the evening. I didn't see nothing." "Nothing at all?" "Well," Annie hesitated. "I did see Mrs. Holloway go up, but that's normal. She checks all the floors before bed." Elena looked at Mrs. Holloway. The housekeeper's face was rigid. "What time was this?" Elena asked Annie. "Maybe 8 o'clock, right before the fire started." Elena moved to the next servant, one of the footmen. "What about you, James? See anything?" No, Your Grace. You're certain? I was polishing silver in the pantry, didn't come upstairs until we heard the screaming. She continued down the line. Most servants had similar stories. They were elsewhere, heard the alarm, came running. No one admitted to seeing anything suspicious. Then Elena reached the end of the line. One servant was missing. Where's Sarah? Elena asked. Mrs. Holloway stiffened. Sarah? She requested the evening off. Family emergency. What kind of emergency? Her mother took ill. She left this afternoon. Did she take her belongings? I don't know. Elena turned to Annie. Go check Sarah's room. Tell me if her things are still there. Annie scurried away. Elena faced Mrs. Holloway. How long has Sarah worked here? 6 months. And before that? She had references, good ones, from a family in... Mrs. Holloway paused. From London. What family? I'd have to check the records. Check them, now. The housekeeper left, her spine rigid with affront. Elena addressed the remaining servants. The rest of you are dismissed, but no one leaves the grounds without my permission. And if anyone remembers anything at all, you come find me immediately. They scattered quickly, grateful to escape. Annie returned breathless. Her room's empty, Your Grace. Everything's gone. Looks like she packed in a hurry. There's clothes on the floor, drawers left open. Elena's suspicion crystallized into certainty. Mrs. Holloway returned with a ledger. Sarah's references came from the Pemberton household. Everything clicked into place. Elena ran. She found Pemberton in the guest wing, packing his bags. He looked up when she burst through the door. Your Grace? What's... Sarah, Elena said. The maid you recommended. Where is she? Pemberton's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. She worked for your family before you sent her here, and tonight she tried to kill Charlotte. That's absurd. Is it? She disappeared right after the fire started, took all her belongings, and her references traced back to you. Elena stepped closer. What did you tell her to do, Thomas? What were your orders? I didn't order anything. But you knew what she might do, didn't you? Pemberton sat heavily on the bed. I thought she was just gathering information, evidence for the custody case. I gave her money to report back on conditions in the house, on how the girls were being treated. You planted a spy. I wanted to protect my nieces by putting them in danger. Elena's voice rose. Sarah wasn't just reporting, Thomas. She was escalating, and tonight she tried to murder a child. No, that can't be right. She wouldn't... Pemberton's face crumpled. I never told her to hurt anyone. I swear. I just wanted information. Then why did she set that fire? I don't know. Elena studied him. He looked genuinely horrified, genuinely confused, which meant either he was an excellent liar or Sarah had been working her own agenda. Where would she go? Elena demanded. If she ran, where would she run to? I don't know. I barely knew the girl. She came recommended by... He stopped. By whom? Pemberton's face went gray. By Catherine. Lady Ashford. Elena didn't bother knocking. She threw open Lady Ashford's door to find the woman sitting by the fire, still dressed, staring into the flames. You placed Sarah here, Elena said. Lady Ashford didn't turn. Yes. Why? To watch, to document, to gather evidence that Adrian was unfit. She tried to kill Charlotte tonight. I know. Lady Ashford's voice was hollow. I heard the screams, saw the smoke, and I knew. Elena moved into the room, her anger momentarily overtaken by confusion. If you knew, why didn't you stop her? Why didn't you say anything? Because by the time I realized what she'd done, it was too late. The fire was already burning. Adrian was already inside. Lady Ashford finally turned. Her face was ravaged with tears. I never told her to hurt anyone. You have to believe that. I wanted information, yes. Evidence, yes. But not this. What exactly did you tell her? To document everything. To note any signs of neglect or abuse. To... Lady Ashford's voice broke. To look for proof that Adrian was dangerous, that he couldn't be trusted with the girls. and she took that as permission to create evidence. Apparently, Elena felt cold fury wash over her. Do you understand what you've done? You were so consumed with blame, so determined to make Adrian the villain, that you gave a mad woman access to innocent children. I know. Charlotte could have died tonight. Vivian could have died, all because you couldn't accept that sometimes tragedies just happen. I know! Lady Ashford stood, her composure finally shattering. I know what I've done. I know I'm responsible, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But right now, recriminations won't help. We need to find Sarah before she tries again. Again? Elena's blood ran cold. You think she'll come back? I think she's obsessed. I think in her twisted mind, she believes she's protecting the girls from their father. And people like that don't stop just because they failed once. Elena ran back to the Duke's chambers. He was standing by the window, watching the grounds, both daughters asleep behind him. Sarah was Lady Ashford's spy, Elena said without preamble. She set the fire, and Lady Ashford thinks she might try again. The Duke's expression went deadly. Where is she? We don't know. She fled after the fire, but Elena hesitated. There's more. Sarah didn't just want information. She wanted to hurt you, hurt your daughters. Lady Ashford thinks she's developed some kind of obsession. What kind of obsession? Lady Ashford appeared in the doorway, Pemberton behind her. The kind that comes from a broken mind, Lady Ashford said quietly. I made inquiries after hiring her. Her previous positions. She had a pattern. She'd attach herself to families, become overly invested in their dynamics. When things didn't match her expectations, she'd intervene. Intervene how? The Duke asked. Small things at first, moving objects, creating misunderstandings. But with one family, the Harringtons, there was an incident. The children got sick, very sick. The doctors suspected poisoning but couldn't prove it. Sarah left before they could question her. Elena felt sick. And you hired her anyway? I didn't know about the Harringtons until after. I was so focused on building a case against Adrian that I didn't properly vet. Lady Ashford's voice broke. I put those girls in danger because I was too consumed with my own grief to see clearly. The Duke moved toward her. For a moment, Elena thought he might strike her. Instead, he spoke with icy calm. You will help us find her. You will use every resource at your disposal. And then you will leave this house and never come back. Adrian, I don't care about your grief anymore. Catherine, I don't care about your guilt or your explanations. You nearly got my daughter killed. That's unforgivable. I'll help you find her, Lady Ashford whispered. But please, don't shut me out of their lives completely. Not again. That's not your decision to make anymore. A sound from the bed. Charlotte whimpered in her sleep, calling for her father. The Duke went to her immediately, murmuring reassurances. Elena pulled Lady Ashford and Pemberton into the hallway. Start with her room, she said quietly. See if she left anything behind. Letters, notes, anything that might tell us where she'd go or what she's planning. Thomas, check with the staff in the village. Someone must have seen her leave. Find out if she took a horse, a carriage, if she's on foot. What will you do? Pemberton asked. I'm going to search Margaret's things. Why Margaret's things? Because if Sarah is obsessed with this family, with protecting the girls from their father, she'll have studied Margaret, tried to understand her. And Margaret kept journals. I saw them in the library. If Sarah read them, she might have taken something, used something Margaret wrote to justify her actions. It was a long shot, but it was all Elena had. She found the journals in the library exactly where she'd seen them weeks ago, leather-bound volumes on a high shelf, covered in dust. Elena brought down all 6 and started reading. Margaret's handwriting was elegant, her entries thoughtful. She wrote about her daughters, her husband, her hopes for their family. Elena felt like an intruder reading this dead woman's private thoughts. But she kept reading. The entries about her final pregnancy were painful. Margaret knew the risks. The doctors had been clear. But she'd wanted to try anyway. Not for Adrian, but for herself. She'd wanted to give life to another child, wanted to prove she was strong enough. Adrian begged me not to do this, one entry read. He said our daughters were enough, that he didn't need a son, that he couldn't bear to lose me. But I'm stubborn, always have been, and I want this baby so much it hurts. Elena's throat tightened. Then she found the missing pages. Several entries had been carefully cut out, the paper sliced cleanly with a blade. The dates corresponded to the weeks just before Margaret's death. Someone had removed evidence. Elena checked the other journals. More missing pages, all from the final months of Margaret's life. She brought the journals to the Duke. "Someone's been cutting pages out," she said, "removing entries from right before Margaret died." The Duke took the journals, his bandaged hands clumsy. Who would do that? Someone who wanted to control the narrative, someone who… Elena stopped. "Do you remember what Margaret wrote about in those final weeks?" "She wrote about everything, the pregnancy, her fears, her hopes." He paused. "She wrote about me, about how I was handling her decision." "What did she say?" "That I was terrified, that I was trying to be supportive, but she could see through it, that I…" His voice roughened. "That I told her every day how much I loved her, how I'd rather have her than any son." Elena's heart ached. "Sarah took those pages, removed evidence that you didn't pressure Margaret, that you actually opposed the pregnancy. Why? Because it didn't fit her story. She needed you to be the villain, needed to believe she was saving the girls from a monster." Elena set down the journals. "We need to find those pages. If we can prove what Margaret actually wrote, we can prove your innocence. Prove that Lady Ashford's entire case was built on lies and stolen evidence." A knock on the door. Pemberton entered, his face grim. "One of the stable boys saw Sarah," he said. "She took a horse, headed toward the old mill on the eastern edge of the property." "The mill?" The Duke frowned. "That's been abandoned for years." "Which makes it a perfect hiding place." The Duke stood. "I'm going after her." "Your hands are burned," Elena protested. "You can barely hold a pen, let alone ride." "I'm going." "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Yes." Elena met his gaze. "Because you're injured and angry and likely to do something reckless. And because if Sarah has those journal pages, I want to be there when we find them." "Elena, shh! Don't argue. We're wasting time." They rode out at dawn, Elena, the Duke, and Pemberton, along with 2 footmen for backup. The eastern woods were dense, the path to the mill barely visible through overgrown vegetation. The mill itself stood like a rotting tooth against the morning sky. Half the roof had collapsed. The water wheel hung broken and still. "She could be anywhere, Pemberton whispered. "Then we search everywhere," the Duke said. They dismounted and approached on foot. The mill was silent except for the wind whistling through broken boards. Elena entered first, her heart pounding. The interior was dark and smelled of mold and decay. Broken machinery littered the floor, mice scurried in the corners. "Sarah?" Elena called. "We know you're here. Come out. We just want to talk." Silence. Then, from above, "You're lying." Elena looked up. Sarah stood on what remained of the second floor, her dress filthy, her hair wild. She held something in her hands. Papers. The journal pages. "Those don't belong to you," Elena said carefully. "They were private. Margaret's private thoughts." "They're proof," Sarah said. "Proof that he killed her. Proof that he forced her into that pregnancy even though he knew it would kill her." "That's not what they say, Sarah. That's what you want them to say." "I read them. She wrote about his pressure, his insistence on an heir." "She wrote that he begged her not to do it," Elena interrupted. "She wrote that he told her every day he'd rather have her than any son. You removed those pages because they contradicted the story you wanted to tell." Sarah's face twisted. "You're protecting him. Just like everyone else. Just like her." She pointed at Elena with shaking hands. "You came here, and you seduced him, and now you're trying to take her place." "I'm not trying to take anyone's place. I'm trying to protect 2 little girls from being used as weapons in other people's wars. I'm protecting them from him. He's dangerous. He's their father, and he loves them. And you tried to kill one of them last night." I wouldn't." Sarah's voice rose to a shriek. "I was trying to scare him, make him realize he wasn't fit to keep them. The fire wasn't supposed to spread so fast. Charlotte wasn't supposed to be in there. But she was, and she almost died." "That wasn't my fault." The Duke stepped forward. "Sarah, Look at me. Sarah's eyes locked on him. Elena saw madness there, and grief, and something broken beyond repair. I don't know what happened to make you this way, the Duke said quietly. But I do know this. Margaret wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want you hurting our daughters in her name. You don't get to speak for her. I was her husband. I knew her better than anyone. His voice was steady despite his bandaged hands. And she would be horrified by what you've done. Liar! Sarah clutched the papers tighter. I'm the only one who understands, the only one who sees the truth. Then let us read the truth. Elena held out her hand. Give us the pages. Let everyone see what Margaret actually wrote. If you're right, the words will prove it. Sarah hesitated. Please, Elena said softly. No more violence, no more fear. Just let the truth speak for itself. For a moment, Elena thought she'd gotten through. Then Sarah smiled, a terrible, broken smile, and held the papers over the edge of the floor. If I can't have the truth, she said, no one can. She let go. The pages fluttered down into the darkness below. Elena lunged forward, trying to catch them. The Duke grabbed her arm, pulling her back as the floorboards groaned ominously. Sarah laughed, high and cracked, and took a step backward. The floor gave way. She fell with a scream, disappearing into the rotted machinery below. Elena heard the impact, then silence. Pemberton ran to the edge, looking down. His face went white. She's dead. The Duke closed his eyes. Elena's hands shook as she climbed down to where the pages had fallen. She gathered them carefully, her vision blurring with tears she didn't fully understand. The journal pages were water-stained and torn, but still readable. She sat in the ruined mill and read Margaret's final words. Adrian came to me today, begging me one last time to reconsider. He was crying, my strong, stoic husband, crying like his heart was breaking. He told me he doesn't need a son, that our daughters are perfect, that losing me would destroy him. I love him so much for saying that, but I need to do this. Not for him, for me, to prove I'm more than my fear, to prove I can create life one more time. If something happens, if the worst occurs, I need him to know this was my choice, my body, my risk, my decision. He tried to protect me from it, but I chose anyway. And I need him to promise me something. If I die, he has to live. He has to raise our daughters with love and warmth and joy. He can't let grief consume him. He can't become a ghost. Promise me, Adrian. Promise you'll live. Elena wept. When she climbed out of the mill, the Duke was waiting. She handed him the pages without speaking. He read them, his face crumbling with each word. She knew, he whispered. She knew what might happen, and she chose anyway. And she made me promise to live. Did you? Elena asked gently. Did you promise her? Yes. The night before she went into labor, she made me swear. He looked at Elena, his eyes red and raw. I broke that promise. For 5 years, I broke it every single day. Then keep it now, Elena said. It's not too late. He stared at the pages, his dead wife's final words, her final wish, and something in him finally, truly broke. He wept. Great. Racking sobs that shook his entire body. Pemberton looked away, giving him privacy. Elena stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding him as he shattered. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm so sorry, Margaret. I'm so sorry. She forgives you, Elena whispered. I think she already did. They buried Sarah in the village cemetery, a pauper's grave, unmarked and unremarked. Lady Ashford paid for it, her last act before leaving Ravenmore Manor forever. I don't expect forgiveness, she told the Duke before she left. But I want you to know I'll live with what I've done, what I almost caused, and I'll pray that someday those girls will understand I never meant to hurt them. Will you contest the will? The Duke asked. Try for visitation rights through the courts? No, you were right. I lost that privilege when I put them in danger. She paused at the door of her carriage. But if someday you think they might want to know me again, I'll be waiting. She left. The Duke didn't watch her go. Pemberton stayed 2 more days, helping repair the fire damage, spending time with his nieces. On his last evening, he found Elena in the garden. "I owe you an apology," he said, "for everything. The custody threats, the investigation. Sarah, you were grieving. That's not an excuse." "No, but it's an explanation." Elena looked at him. "Are you going to try to rebuild a relationship with Adrian? With the girls?" "I'd like to, if he'll let me." "He will. He's learning that shutting people out doesn't protect anyone. It just creates more pain." Pemberton smiled slightly. "You're good for him, you know, for all of them. I'm just doing what needs to be done. That's what makes you good for them." After he left, the house settled into a new rhythm. The nursery was rebuilt, brighter this time, with larger windows and cheerful paint. Charlotte and Vivian helped choose the colors. The Duke began taking the girls on walks through the grounds, teaching them to ride, reading to them every evening before bed. He smiled more. Not often, not easily, but more. And one evening, 3 months after the fire, he found Elena in the library. "I have something for you," he said. He handed her a small box. Inside was a ring, simple gold with a single emerald. "It was my mother's," he said. "I want you to have it." Elena stared at the ring. "Why?" "Because you've earned it. Because you've become part of this family in ways I never expected. Because—" He took a breath. "Because Margaret's last wish was that I live, and you taught me how. I didn't teach you anything. You did the work yourself. But I couldn't have done it without you." He took the ring from the box and held it out. "This isn't a proposal. We're already married. But it's a promise that this marriage, our partnership, it means something to me now. You mean something to me." Elena let him slide the ring onto her finger. "I don't love you," he said quietly. "Not yet. Not the way I loved Margaret. But I think I could, if you'd give me time." "I have time," Elena said. "And if I fail, if I slip back into old habits, then I'll drag you back out again, same as always." He smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "You're relentless." "Someone has to be." He pulled her into his arms, kissed her forehead, held her like she was something precious instead of just useful. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a beginning. And that evening, when they sat down to dinner with both girls chattering happily about their day, when Charlotte showed them her latest drawing and Vivian read them a passage from her Latin primer, when the Duke laughed at something silly and reached across the table to squeeze Elena's hand. That evening, Elena finally felt like she belonged, like she was home, like she was home. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived, it transformed everything. The gardens at Ravenmore Manor erupted with color, crocuses pushing through thawed earth, daffodils lining the gravel paths, cherry trees blooming in clouds of pink and white. The staff opened windows that hadn't been opened in years, letting fresh air sweep through rooms that had been sealed in mourning for too long. Charlotte spent hours outside, drawing flowers and birds with charcoal Miss Chen had given her. Vivian started a small garden of her own near the kitchen, planting herbs with careful precision. Even the Duke seemed lighter, his steps less heavy, his silences less oppressive. But Elena knew the real test was coming. The summer season would bring social obligations, balls, dinners, garden parties. The Duke would be expected to emerge from his self-imposed exile. Society would judge whether his new Duchess was acceptable, whether his household was respectable, whether the Duke of Ravenmore had finally rejoined the world of the living. "We could decline the invitation," so the Duke said one morning over breakfast. "Stay here, avoid the scrutiny." "We could," Elena agreed, spreading marmalade on her toast. "But then what? Hide forever? Teach the girls that other people's opinions matter more than our own choices?" Vivian looked up from her book. "I don't want to go to balls. People stare." "Let them stare," Elena said. "You have nothing to be ashamed of." "But they'll talk about Mother, about how Father—" Vivian stopped, glancing at her father. The Duke set down his teacup. "About how I grieved badly? Yes, they will, and we'll let them, because their gossip says more about them than it does about us." Charlotte kicked her feet under the table. "Does that mean we get new dresses?" Elena laughed. Yes, that means new dresses. Can mine be yellow? If you want. What about you, Elena? What color will yours be? Elena met the Duke's eyes across the table. Something warm passed between them. Not quite love, but something real and growing. I haven't decided yet, she said. The first invitation came from Lord and Lady Ashworth, distant cousins of the Duke who'd maintained cordial relations despite the years of isolation. A garden party. Relatively small. A safe way to re-enter society. Elena accepted on behalf of the family. Are you certain about this? The Duke asked the night before the party. They were in his study, reviewing household accounts, a task they'd fallen into doing together, their evenings spent in companionable work rather than lonely silence. No, Elena admitted, but I'm certain hiding won't help. They'll judge you, harshly. A girl from nowhere who married into the peerage for money. Let them judge. I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters. He reached across the desk and took her hand, the one wearing his mother's ring. You're braver than I ever was. I'm just more stubborn. That too. The garden party was exactly as uncomfortable as Elena expected. They arrived in the Duke's carriage, all four of them, because Elena had insisted the girls come too. Charlotte wore her yellow dress, Vivian a more subdued blue. Elena had chosen green silk that complemented her dark hair. The Duke was in his usual black, but he'd added a gray waistcoat at Elena's suggestion. Small concessions to spring, she'd told him. You're trying to reform my wardrobe now? Someone has to. Lady Ashworth greeted them with careful politeness. She was in her 60s, elegant and sharp-eyed, and Elena could see her cataloging every detail, Elena's dress, the girl's deportment, the way the Duke held himself. Your Grace, Lady Ashworth said, how lovely to see you among the living again. The Duke didn't flinch. Thank you for the invitation, Constance. And this must be the new Duchess. Lady Ashworth's gaze swept over Elena. Quite young, aren't you? 23, Elena said evenly. Old enough to manage a household and raise two wonderful stepdaughters. Indeed. Lady Ashworth's smile was thin. Well, do come in. Everyone's eager to meet you. The garden was full of titled guests, all of them pretending not to stare while staring intently. Elena felt their eyes tracking her movements, heard the whispers that stopped when she got too close. Charlotte pressed closer to Elena's side. I don't like it here. I know, sweetheart, but we're going to smile and be gracious anyway. Why? Because that's how we win. They circulated through the party. The Duke introduced Elena to various lords and ladies, most of whom greeted her with polite coolness. Elena smiled and made small talk and refused to be intimidated. Then Lady Pemberton approached, an aunt by marriage, someone Elena hadn't met before. So you're the girl who trapped the Duke into marriage, Lady Pemberton said without preamble. The nearby conversation stopped. Elena felt the Duke tense beside her. She squeezed his hand once, a signal to let her handle this. I'm the woman who married him, yes, Elena said calmly, though trapped is an interesting word choice, implies I had more power than a bankrupt merchant's daughter typically possesses. You had the power of desperation, his and yours. True. We were both desperate. He needed a capable wife, I needed financial security. We made a practical arrangement that benefited both families. Elena met Lady Pemberton's eyes. Is there something shameful about honesty? About admitting that not all marriages are built on romance? It's unseemly. What's unseemly is pretending that half the marriages in this garden weren't made for similar reasons. Money, connections, social advancement. At least the Duke and I were honest about our motivations. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, some scandalized. Lady Pemberton's face reddened. You're quite bold. I'm quite practical, and I love those girls. Elena gestured to Charlotte and Vivian, who were being shown a fountain by Lady Ashworth's granddaughter. I came into this marriage with clear eyes. I've worked every day since to make it a real family. If that's unseemly to you, I don't know what to tell you. And what about Margaret? What about the Duke's late wife? Are you trying to replace her? No one could replace her, and I'm not trying to. Elena felt the Duke's hand tighten around hers. But I am trying to help her daughters heal, to help their father heal, to build something new from the ruins of old grief. If that offends you, then perhaps you should examine why you prefer people to stay broken." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Lord Ashworth, the host, began to clap, slowly at first, then with genuine enthusiasm. "Well said, Your Grace," he called out. "Well said indeed." Other guests joined in. Not everyone. Elena could see disapproving faces, could hear continued whispers. But enough. Enough to make a statement. Lady Pemberton turned and stalked away. The Duke leaned down and whispered in Elena's ear, "You just made an enemy." "I made several, but I also made a point." "What point?" "That I'm not going to apologize for existing, or for this family existing." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "You're magnificent. I'm mouthy and stubborn. That too." The rest of the party passed more smoothly. People began approaching Elena with genuine curiosity rather than just judgment. She fielded questions about the household, about the girl's education, about her plans for the estate. She was honest without being overly familiar, warm without being desperate for approval. Charlotte made friends with Lady Ashworth's granddaughter, the two of them giggling over something by the rose garden. Vivian relaxed enough to actually eat some cake. And the Duke stood beside Elena like a partner, not a master. He introduced her with pride in his voice. He laughed at her wit. He touched her back, her hand, her shoulder with casual affection. They were playing a role Elena knew, presenting a united front. But somewhere in the performance, something real had taken root. On the carriage ride home, Charlotte fell asleep against Elena's shoulder. Vivian gazed out the window, a small smile on her face. "That wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be," Vivian said quietly. "See?" Elena said. "Sometimes facing the thing we fear makes it less frightening. Some people were still mean. Some people always will be. That's their choice. Our choice is how we respond." The Duke watched this exchange with something like wonder in his eyes. That night, after the girls were in bed, he found Elena on the terrace overlooking the gardens. "Thank you," he said, "for today, for defending us, for—" He struggled for words, "for being exactly who you are." "You don't need to thank me for that." "I think I do." He moved to stand beside her at the railing. "When I married you, I thought I was hiring a competent manager, someone to run the household and maintain appearances. I never expected—" He paused. "I never expected you to fight for us the way you do." "Someone had to." "But why? You got what you needed from this arrangement. Your father's debts are clear. You have security, a title, a comfortable life. You could have just coasted, played the role without actually caring." Elena turned to face him. "Is that what you think? That I'm just playing a role?" "I don't know what to think anymore." His voice was raw, because somewhere in the last 6 months, this stopped being an arrangement for me. You stopped being a convenience, and I don't know how to navigate that. Then don't navigate. Just feel. I don't know if I remember how. Elena reached up and touched his face. He'd shaved that morning, but stubble was already growing back. She could feel the tension in his jaw, the way he was holding himself together through sheer force of will. "You're already feeling," she said softly. "You're just scared to admit it." "What if I'm not ready? What if I can't?" "Then we take it slow. We've got time." "Do we?" "You're 23, Elena. You could have married someone who could give you everything, passion, romance, a future without all this baggage. I married you, and I don't regret it." "You should." "Well, I don't, so you'll have to live with that." He laughed, a surprised, rough sound. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her, his face buried in her hair. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered. "And it terrifies me." Elena's heart hammered. "Why?" "Because I failed Margaret. I promised to protect her and she died anyway. And the thought of caring for someone that much again, of being responsible for someone's happiness and safety and life, it makes me want to run." "Then run. I'll catch you." He pulled back to look at her. "You mean that?" "Yes." even knowing I might fail you too. Everyone fails sometimes. That's not the same as giving up. Elena held his gaze. I'm not Margaret. I'm not fragile or in danger. I'm tough and stubborn, and I don't need you to protect me from the world. I just need you to let me stand beside you while we face it together. I'm not good at together. You're learning. He kissed her then, properly kissed her, not the perfunctory pecks they'd exchanged at their wedding or in public. This was real, searching, a question and an answer all at once. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. I can't promise I won't mess this up, he said. I can't promise I won't drive you crazy. Fair enough. They stood on the terrace as night deepened around them, holding each other like they were the only solid things in a shifting world. The summer social season continued. More invitations came, some genuinely friendly, others from people looking for gossip fodder. Elena accepted the former and politely declined the latter. She and the Duke established a routine. Public appearances once a week, carefully chosen to maximize positive impression while minimizing exposure to hostile elements. The girls accompanied them when appropriate, stayed home when not. Vivian thrived with the increased social interaction. She was naturally reserved, but she had her father's sharp mind and her mother's grace. At a musicale, she played piano with such precision that several matrons inquired about her instruction. Charlotte remained exuberant and exhausting, charming some people and overwhelming others. Elena didn't try to change her, just channeled that energy into appropriate directions. And slowly, painfully, society began to accept them. Not everyone. Lady Pemberton remained hostile. A few others whispered that Elena was common, that the Duke had married beneath him, that the whole arrangement was tawdry, but enough people accepted them. Enough invitations came. Enough genuine friendships began to form. Elena made particular friends with Lady Caroline Winters, a widow of similar age who'd also married into the peerage under complicated circumstances. They'll never fully forgive you for not being born into their world, Caroline told her over tea one afternoon. But they'll respect you if you refuse to apologize for it. I noticed. You're doing well, better than I did at first. I tried so hard to fit in that I lost myself. You're just... Caroline gestured expressively. You. Unabashedly, inconveniently you. Is that a compliment? The highest I can give. But the real turning point came in late August. The Duke received a letter from the Royal Academy, a request for him to join the Board of Trustees. It was an honor, a recognition of his family's historical support for the arts and sciences. It was also a clear signal that society had forgiven his years of isolation. I should decline, he said, staring at the letter. Why? Elena asked. Because it would require regular attendance in London, meetings, social obligations, visibility, and I've just gotten comfortable here, in our routine, he gestured vaguely, this. You can't hide forever. I'm not hiding. I'm choosing peace over performance. Elena set down her embroidery. You're choosing comfort over growth. There's a difference. Maybe growth is overrated. You don't believe that, he sighed. No, but I'm allowed to wish I did. Accept the position, Elena said firmly. We'll figure out the logistics. We'll make it work. We? Did you think I was staying here while you went to London alone? Who would keep you from reverting to brooding silence? Despite himself, he smiled. You're assuming they'd want you on the board too. I'm assuming I'm your wife, and where you go, I go. At least sometimes. Elena picked up her embroidery again. Besides, the girls should see London, experience the city, learn that there's a world beyond Ravenmoor. They're so young. They're growing up, and they need to see their father engaged with that world. Need to see that healing doesn't mean hiding. He studied her for a long moment. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just now noticing. He accepted the position. They moved to the London townhouse for 3 months that autumn. The girls were wide-eyed at everything. The crowds, the shops, the sheer noise and bustle of city life. Miss Chen came with them, managing the girls' education while Elena navigated London society. It was harder than the country had been. London society was more critical, more stratified, more obsessed with bloodlines and propriety. Elena made mistakes, used the wrong fork at a formal dinner, Addressed a duchess with insufficient deference, wore a dress that was considered too bold for a morning call. But she learned, and she refused to be cowed. The Duke's work with the Royal Academy brought them into contact with scholars, artists, scientists, people who cared more about ideas than titles. Elena found herself genuinely enjoying these gatherings, engaging in debates about art and philosophy that would have been unthinkable in her father's house. "You should have been born into this world," Caroline told her at one such gathering. "You have the mind for it." "I don't know about that, but I'm enjoying exploring it." "The Duke seems different too, more present, more—" Caroline searched for the word. "Alive." "He's trying." "It's more than trying. He looks at you like—" Caroline smiled. "Like you're the reason the sun comes up." Elena felt heat creep up her neck. "That's dramatic." "That's true." That night, lying in bed in the London townhouse, Elena asked the Duke what he thought of their time in the city. "It's been good," he said. "Challenging, but good." "Are you glad you accepted the position?" "Yes, though I wouldn't have without you pushing me." "Someone has to push you." He rolled onto his side to look at her. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Elena's breath caught. "What?" "I love you," he repeated. "I've been trying to find the right time to say it, the right words. But there are no right words. Just the truth." He reached out and tucked hair behind her ear. "I love your stubbornness, your courage, the way you fight for my daughters like they're your own, the way you fight for me even when I don't deserve it. I love—" His voice roughened. "I love who I am when I'm with you, someone better than I was, someone worth being." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too." "You don't have to say it just because I did." "I'm not. I've loved you for months. I was just waiting for you to catch up." He laughed and pulled her into his arms. "Of course you were." They made love that night, real love, not duty or arrangement. Afterwards, tangled together in the darkness, Elena felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness, of home. "What are you thinking?" the Duke murmured. "That I'm glad my father's debts forced this marriage. That's a strange thing to be glad about. Maybe, but I wouldn't have found you otherwise. Wouldn't have found them." She meant the girls sleeping in the next room. "Wouldn't have found myself." "Who were you before?" "A girl trying to survive. Now I'm—" Elena paused, searching for the right words. "Now I'm someone who chose to live instead." "We both are." They returned to Ravenmoor for the winter. The London season had been exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure, but coming home felt like breathing again. The house had changed. Or maybe they had changed. But walking through the doors didn't feel oppressive anymore. It felt welcoming. Mrs. Holloway had decorated for the coming holidays, greenery and ribbons, nothing ostentatious but enough to feel festive. The staff seemed lighter too, less burdened by unspoken rules. "Welcome home, Your Grace," Mrs. Holloway said. Her tone was almost warm. "It's good to be back," Elena said, meaning it. That first night home, they had dinner as a family. All four of them, plus Miss Chen, who'd become more friend than employee over the months. They talked and laughed and made plans for the new year. "Can we have a Christmas ball?" Charlotte asked, "with dancing and music and everything?" The Duke hesitated. Elena knew what he was thinking. They hadn't celebrated Christmas properly since Margaret died. "I think that's a wonderful idea," Elena said. "Really?" Charlotte bounced in her seat. "Can I wear my yellow dress?" "You'll need a new dress. You've grown." "I can help plan it," Vivian offered. "The decorations and menu and everything." "We all can," the Duke said quietly. "As a family." Charlotte beamed. Vivian smiled her rare, beautiful smile. Miss Chen looked pleased. Elena felt something swell in her chest. Pride, maybe. Or just love. For this complicated, broken, healing family they'd built together. The Christmas ball became the talk of the county. Invitations went out to neighbors near and far. The house was cleaned and decorated within an inch of its life. The girls worked with Elena and Miss Chen to plan every detail. 3 days before the ball, a carriage arrived. Thomas Pemberton stepped out, looking older and more tentative than Elena remembered. The Duke stiffened when he saw him. They hadn't spoken since Sarah's death, since the confrontation over custody. "Thomas," the Duke said carefully. "Adrian." Pemberton removed his hat. I got the invitation to the ball. I wanted to make sure it wasn't sent in error. It wasn't. After everything that happened, you're still family, still the girl's uncle, and you tried to make amends." The Duke extended his hand. "We've all made mistakes, all hurt each other. Maybe it's time we try something different." Pemberton stared at the offered hand. Then, slowly, he took it. "I'd like that." The night of the ball, Ravenmore Manor blazed with light and life. Carriages lined the drive. Music spilled from the open windows. Guests in their finest filled the ballroom. Neighbors, friends from London, family. Charlotte wore cream silk with yellow ribbons. Vivian wore blue. Elena wore emerald green that matched her ring, and the Duke wore black, yes, but with a silver waistcoat and a cravat pin that had been Margaret's favorite. "You're honoring her," Elena said softly as she helped him adjust the pin. "I am, but I'm also living." He took her hand. "The way she asked me to." The ball was beautiful. Charlotte danced until her feet hurt. Vivian played piano for one set, earning genuine applause. Thomas Pemberton spent time with his nieces, telling them stories about their mother that made them laugh instead of cry. And Elena and the Duke opened the dancing together. As they moved across the floor, Elena was acutely aware of everyone watching, judging, assessing, gossiping. But she didn't care. She looked at the man holding her, saw the peace in his eyes, the way he smiled at her like she was the only person in the room. "Happy?" he asked. "Yes." "You?" "More than I thought possible." Later, when most guests had left and only close friends remained, Caroline Winters pulled Elena aside. "You did it," Caroline said. "You brought him back to life." "He did that himself. I just refused to let him quit." "That's the same thing." Caroline squeezed her hand. "You know there's a wager going around London about whether this marriage is real or still just an arrangement. Let them wager." "I told them it's real, that anyone with eyes can see how he looks at you." Elena smiled. "What did they say?" "That you must have bewitched him. Common girl with no magic except determination." Caroline laughed. "I told them determination is the best magic there is." As the last guest departed and the house quieted, Elena found the Duke in the library. He was reading by the fire, still in his evening clothes. She settled beside him. "The girl's asleep?" Finally, Charlotte tried to stay awake to relive every moment. He set down his book. "Thank you for pushing for this, for bringing life back into this house. We did it together." "No, you led, I followed. There's a difference." Elena took his hand. "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me?" "Never. Do you?" "Never." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down. "I've been thinking," the Duke said eventually, "about Margaret's journals, the ones we recovered." "What about them?" "I want the girls to have them. When they're older, when they're ready." He paused. "I want them to know their mother as a real person, flawed and brave and complicated, not just a perfect memory. I think that's beautiful. And I want to start keeping my own journal for them. So they'll know me too. Know this time. Know how we built this family from ashes." Elena's throat tightened. "They're lucky to have you. We're all lucky to have each other." Spring came again, bringing the anniversary of Elena's arrival at Ravenmore Manor. 1 year. It felt like a lifetime. She walked through the gardens with Charlotte, who was drawing tulips. Vivian was nearby, reading under a tree. The Duke was in his study, working on correspondence. "Elena?" Charlotte said, looking up from her drawing. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you love Father?" Elena smiled. "Yes, very much." "And us? Do you love us too?" "More than I can possibly say." Charlotte considered this. "Good. Because we love you too. Vivian says we shouldn't say it because you're not really our mother, but I think you are. Not instead of our real mother, but She struggled for words. But as well as, is that okay? Elena knelt down so she was at Charlotte's level. That's more than okay, that's perfect. Charlotte threw her arms around Elena's neck. I'm glad Father married you. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. That evening, Elena and the Duke took a walk through the grounds, something they did most evenings now, a quiet ritual that belonged only to them. The estate manager sent his report, the Duke said. The crops are doing well, the tenants are happy, everything's running smoothly. Because you're actually managing it instead of hiding from it. Because we're managing it. I couldn't do this without you. Of course you could. You just wouldn't want to. He laughed. True. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached the old oak tree at the edge of the property, the spot where Elena had first realized she might actually want this marriage to be real. I have something for you, Mo, the Duke said. He pulled out a folded paper. Elena opened it to find a deed, transferring half ownership of Ravenmore Manor and all its holdings to her name. What is this? She asked, stunned. Security? Partnership? Recognition that you're not here because I bought you, but because we chose each other. He took her hand. If something happens to me, I want you to be protected. I want you to have control over your own life. Adrian, I should have done this months ago. Should have given you real power instead of just the illusion of it. He squeezed her hand. You transformed this place. Transformed me. The least I can do is acknowledge that legally. Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks. Thank you. Thank you. For taking a risk on a broken man and his broken household. For seeing potential where everyone else saw ruin. You were never ruined, just grieving. Same thing sometimes. No, grief is a wound. Wounds can heal. Elena folded the deed carefully. We healed together. We did. He pulled her into his arms. They stood under the oak tree as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. I love you, Elena whispered. I love you too. More than I knew I could love anyone again. Margaret would be happy, I think, that you're happy. I think she would be too. They walked back to the house, hand in hand, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. Inside, Vivian and Charlotte were setting up a game in the drawing room. Miss Chen was reading by the fire. Mrs. Holloway was directing servants to prepare dinner. It was ordinary, domestic, beautifully, perfectly normal. This was the life Elena had fought for. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. Built on honesty and effort and the radical choice to keep trying even when it would have been easier to give up. She thought about the girl who'd stood in her father's study a year ago, agreeing to marry a stranger to save her family. That girl had been scared and desperate and determined not to cry. She'd been surviving. Now Elena was living. That night after dinner, after the girls were asleep, after the house had settled into quiet, Elena stood at the window of her bedroom. Hers and Adrian's now, the adjoining door left permanently open. Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? He asked. About how much has changed, how much we've changed. Any regrets? Not a single one. Good. He kissed her temple. Because I have plans for us, for our family, for the future. What kind of plans? The kind that involve more balls and less isolation. The kind that involve the girls going to university if they want. The kind that involve you having whatever you want. Art lessons, travel, your own pursuits. He turned her to face him. The kind that involve us building something new instead of just preserving something old. Elena smiled. I like those plans. I thought you might. They stood together in the quiet, listening to the house breathe around them. This place that had been a tomb was now a home. This man who'd been frozen was now warm. These children who'd been taught not to feel were now thriving. And Elena had become exactly who she'd needed to be. Not despite the arranged marriage, but because of it. She'd walked into a storm and reshaped it. She'd been bought, but became invaluable. She'd agreed to duty and found love. And standing there in the bedroom of Ravenmore Manor, wrapped in the arms of a man who'd learned to live again, surrounded by a family she'd fought to save, Elena felt something she'd never expected to feel in this place. Peace. Not the peace of resignation or surrender, but the peace of knowing she'd won. Not against anyone, but for everyone. For the girls who now knew how to laugh, for the man who now knew how to feel, for herself, who discovered that survival and thriving weren't mutually exclusive. The house at Ravenmore would never be perfect. The Duke would still have dark days. The girls would still carry scars. Elena herself would still wake, sometimes wondering if it was all too fragile, too new, too easily broken. But they'd face those challenges together, as partners, as family. And that was more than enough. That was everything. Outside, spring rain began to fall, gentle this time, washing the world clean. Elena listened to it tap against the windows and thought about all the storms she'd weathered to get here. "Thank you," Adrian whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up. On me. On us. On any of it." Elena turned in his arms and kissed him. "I never learned how to give up. It's a terrible habit." He laughed against her lips. "The very best kind of terrible." They moved to the bed, leaving the curtains open so they could watch the rain. And as they fell asleep in each other's arms, Elena thought about Margaret's last wish, that Adrian would live instead of just surviving. He'd kept that promise. They all had. And in keeping it, they'd built something more precious than any fortune, more lasting than any legacy. They'd built a family forged from ruin, strengthened by adversity, and bound by the fierce, stubborn choice to keep loving even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. The rain fell softly on Ravenmore Manor, washing away the last traces of old grief, making space for new growth. And inside, 4 people slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow they'd wake up together, that they'd face whatever came together, that they'd chosen each other every day in 1,000 small ways. And that was the truest kind of happily ever after there was.